Thank you, Chuck. Okay. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the May 12th, 2020 North Bethany County Service District for Roads Budget Committee meeting. We have members of the Budget Committee attending via Zoom, as well as some of us in the room. So what I thought I would do is make note of who's in the room, and then we'll also do roll call on Zoom so that everyone is familiar who's where. So here in the room, you have myself, Catherine Harrington.
Washington County Commissioner Dick Skelton.
County Commissioner Jerry Woolley.
And why don't we do the staff introductions now as well?
Okay. We weren't on.
Oh, your mics weren't on. Sorry, Sheila.
One more time. Sheila Jambroni, Land Use and Transportation.
And Stephen Roberts in Land Use and Transportation.
Steve Rhodes, Interim County Administrator.
Jack Leon, CFO.
And then on Zoom, I see Commissioner Pam Treese. You want to say hello?
Good evening. Thank you for accommodating Zoom. This is Pam Treese, District 2.
Sarah.
Hi, this is Sarah Beachy, community member of the North Bethany Service District for Roads.
Dan.
Hello, this is Dan Reed, community member of the Service District.
And are there more?
Wait a minute, excuse me, could we ask Dan who he is attending with? I see a little piece ahead there.
Yeah. This is Nathan.
Hi,
He's
Nathan.
Our junior member.
He's our coworker.
Junior member.
Yep. He'll be a year old in a couple of weeks.
Wonderful. Do we have Bruce Young?
I'm here.
Oh, terrific. Just can't see you. How about
I don't know
Tosin?
why. Let me see. How do I?
Turn on the video.
Yeah, I apologize to everyone. I just had to buy a new laptop, tablet rather, at the last minute because my old one died.
Oh, no.
And I just got Zoom put on this thing this morning, and
Oh, gosh.
obviously, how do I get my picture to work?
No worries. We're here for you. We can hear you loud and clear.
That's good.
But we would like to make sure that you have the video so that you can see the slides.
Yes, I can see the table with everyone around it. At the moment.
Oh, great. You can see us. That's
And the
good.
people have been popping up on the screen as you talk to them. So.
Great. Do we have Commissioner Rogers on Zoom as well?
We do not yet, Madam Chair.
Okay. Do we have Tosin?
I do not see him on as well.
Do we have Muriel Balan? Okay.
Yeah.
So it looks like we have the...
Yeah, Murali, this is Murali here. I don't think my video is working. Yeah, I'm here.
Murali.
That was Miri.
That was Murali Balan.
Yeah. Sorry. Murali.
Murali Balan.
Oh, hello, Murali. Thank you very much. I mispronounced your name.
Oh, that's all right.
And Madam Chair, Commissioner Rogers is now on.
Oh, Commissioner Rogers, are you there? Hello, Commissioner Rogers. Can you hear us?
I can, thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you for saying hello. So that is the cast, I believe. Is there anyone else out there on the Zoom call?
No additional members, just members of the public listening in tonight.
Okay, great. Thank you. So we have just one committee member missing. All right. So welcome, everyone. Okay, so I have a role here of welcoming everyone, and we've gone through the introduction, and the first thing we need to go through is electing a Board Committee Chair.
Thank you, Chair Harrington. And I will briefly go over the agenda with the committee members first, and then we will move on to the committee actions. So we have a 6-step agenda tonight. We already gone through the welcome and the introduction.
Can
and then
we
the
show
next
the
step,
slides, please?
Yes.
Sorry, everyone. This is the first time we've done a budget committee meeting online.
We Zoom, yes. So
We're all learning new things.
Perfect. So if we can get to slide number 4. Thank you. So the second step in tonight's agenda is that we are going to take some committee actions. The number 1 action is to elect a committee chair, and then we will review and adopt of the budget hearing procedures. For the members that is participating via Zoom, you should have a member packet in your inbox, and that was just sent this evening. So you should have that in your email inbox. And the next step is the service district at Washington County overview. And Washington County has 4 service districts, and I will do that. And then we have a North Bethany County Service District for road budget presentation, and that's our main program for this particular meeting today. And then the next steps and questions, we'll talk a little bit about the next budget committee meetings. And then lastly, we'll adjourn the meeting. So with that said, we'll get started with the budget committee actions and to the election of a committee chair. Is there any nominations for a committee chair?
I'll nominate our incumbent chair, Sarah Beachy, for another term.
Second.
All those in favor, please vote by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Sarah, thank you once again for being our chair.
All right. Thanks, everyone. And Sarah, as the chair, that you will definitely be participating in leading the committee through the night as well. So the next action item is to review and adopt of the budget hearing procedure. And as I was explaining that, I'd just sent those to you this evening, so you should have that in your inbox if you look at that. But I will definitely bring the draft up and on my screen over here. Actually, I need to get this presented. So give me just a second to get it to our technical team. Yeah, sorry, I didn't send you a file earlier, Chuck. This is my miss, and I'm bringing that in right now. And my apologies for that.
Yeah, that's what I was flipping screens, trying to bring it up.
Right. Do you see it, Chuck?
I could share it if you like. I think I got it.
Well, way to take leadership, Sarah. If you can share it through your screen, I think that'll probably be better for us. We're trying to
no, we're disabled.
get it to our technical teams here. It's taking a moment. So
we're disabled. Attendees can't share.
Oh. I just put it in the Teams chat. Sorry. Should I just email it? Yeah, it's in the Zoom chat. No, it's in the Teams chat, but let me just email it. Yeah, my apologies.
Sarah, you should be able to share it now.
Okay, let's see.
Okay.
Alrighty. So is this Sarah that's sharing right now?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Sarah. If you help us navigate to second page here, that's where the budget hearing procedure is. And then this is I'll just read off the highlights in the procedure here. The North Bethany County Service District for Roads is a special district and a component unit of Washington County. The district's budget must be approved separately from the Washington County's budget. And then the member consists of the Board of Commissioners, plus lay members Tosin Abiodun, Murali Balan, and Sarah Beachy, Daniel Reed, and Bruce Young. The May 12th, 2020 committee meeting includes a budget overview of Washington County staff. And then the budget committee is a local government's fiscal planning advisory committee. Any member may be elected by the committee as its chair. The role of the budget committee includes, as the budget committee, receive the budget message and the proposed budget document. As the budget hearing, provide member of the public with an opportunity to ask questions and then comment on the budget document, approve the budget as submitted by the budget officer or as revised by the budget committee, and the budget document as approved by the budget committee shall specify the ad valorem property tax amount or rate for all funds. The budget is available. We have the link provided in the procedure. It's included as part of Washington County's proposed budget summary. And the North Bethany County Service District for Road budget is included specifically on page 290 and 291. So questions can be emailed to me directly in the finance_budget@co.washington.or.us. The first opportunity for public testimony is going to be the May 27th budget hearing, and there is a second opportunity is also scheduled for June 16th. That is when the Board of Commissioners are scheduled to take action and consider adoption of the budget. So the May 27th public hearing will be formatted as the following. The staff will present the budget overview. It will be a shortened version of today's presentation, and then upon completion of the budget overview, the budget committee chair, and this is going to be Sarah's role, will first offer an opportunity for budget committee questions. Upon the completion of the budget committee questions, the budget committee chair will solicit public testimony, and public testimony will be limited to 3 minutes per person, except for representatives from regional and community-based organizations, where testimony is limited to 10 minutes per organization. Upon completion of the budget review process, a motion and vote are required by the budget committee to approve the North Bethany County Service District for Road budget, including any changes by the budget committee and levy taxes. So that's basically the highlight of the procedure that we'll be using for the budget hearing. So I'll leave for the budget committee's consideration for adoption of this procedure.
Chair? Sarah?
Yes.
I have a question about this, if I might.
Yes.
In the section above, it says at the budget hearing, provide members of the public with an opportunity to ask questions about and comment on the budget document. And then later on, it talks about that very same meeting, May 27th, where members of the public can provide testimony, but it doesn't make it clear that members of the public can ask questions and get their questions answered in that meeting. So I just want to make sure we clarify that.
Yes, absolutely. That's the intention. Is during the public testimony period, it's definitely up for the budget committee to respond to public questions as well.
Okay. So people have to be selective about their questions because they only get 3 minutes to both ask questions, get their answers, and get comment?
That is correct. That is only for the public committee's time in the spirit of managing the time. In fact, for public questions, we are definitely open to any public questions that has been right now, and that has been communicated out through our budget meeting announcements. So we have been getting questions from public as well. Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairwoman. I have a question. I'm part of the school district's budget committee also, and the way they've gone about it is to have an open link submitted for people for the public to submit, and they close it down like 48 or 24 hours before the committee formally meets, and then we on the committee are able to see the questions from the public and the answers also. That might be informative for us on the committee to know what the questions are that are coming in from the public, and where their concerns lie. So that in adjusting things right now, the way they are, we want to maybe make sure that have as much outreach as possible, since people aren't able to just attend the meeting. So would that be a possibility for administration to provide something like that?
Yes, absolutely. We definitely keep a running log of any budget questions that comes through email, or we do receive phone calls from community. It may be a little short notice for this year for us to have an online form available. We do have an online form for people to sign up for public testimony periods, but not one that folks can submit comments. But really writing us an email is just as easy as doing it via an online form. But we can definitely sample that list if there is any related to North Bethany County Service District for those, and then we'll definitely bring that forth to the budget committee at the next meeting.
Okay, I think that would be helpful as committee members to know what's coming in, addressing what other people are saying or have questions about. It would be helpful for us.
Absolutely, will do.
Does anyone else have any questions? So this evening we're recommending adoption onto the full budget.
No, you're recommending adoption for the budget hearing procedures. The approval of the budget actually is the 27th. Yeah.
So moved. I make a motion to adopt these budget procedures for the North Bethany Community Service District for roads.
I second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right.
Motion passes unanimously. Great.
Sorry, I put a little mark on here somehow. Okay. What next do we have to do?
So next, thank you. Thank you, Chair. And Chuck, if we can jump back to the presentation to slide number 6, please. Thank you. All right, so the county has 4 service districts that includes Enhanced Sheriff's Patrol District, Urban Road Maintenance District, North Bethany County Service District for roads, as well as the Service District for lighting number 1. And tonight, as this meeting is specifically regarding North Bethany County Service District for roads. As previously explained, this set of budget, excuse me, for the special district is the proposed budget summary page 290 and 291. Next page, please. So without further ado, I would like to introduce Stephen Roberts from Land Use and Transportation, and then he will take over and provide a budget presentation for North Bethany County Service District for roads.
Thank you, Jack. Go ahead, next slide, please. Next slide. Okay, thank you all. And I have Sheila Jambrone with me here tonight to walk through this with you all. And feel free if you would like to stop and ask questions along the way. I think that's fine if the chair is open to that. And we'll get through this fairly quickly, I believe. So I'd like to just walk us through a little bit of background. And I know we have a new member who is brand new, actually, Mr. Young. So for some background context, in particular for you, about the North Bethany Transportation Funding Strategy. This County Service District for Roads is one element of that larger strategy. We'll talk about sort of where we're at in the implementation of that strategy, what we what the board approved for funding last budget year, and then what our recommendations are going forward for this year.
Excellent.
Next slide, please. So background, the funding strategy for North Bethany was adopted back in 2011 by the board, and that was done in conjunction with the adoption of the community plan for North Bethany. The funding strategy relies on a series of different revenue sources that include the Transportation Development Tax, a North Bethany Transportation System Development Charge, the North Bethany County Service District for Roads, which is the budget that we're here to specifically address tonight, MSTIP, the Major Streets Transportation Improvement Program, and then Trust and Agency, which is funds that are paid by developers in lieu of constructing a required improvement. So in the list, and I'll show you the list here in a minute, there were 14 potential projects. 12 of those are eligible for various public funding sources, the list that's up there above. The plan assumed, or the strategy assumed about a 20-year build out, and obviously revenues accrue over time. Next slide. So this is a snapshot of the funding strategy, what the various constituent parts were in terms of the assumed dollars that each revenue source would generate, and then as a percentage of the total. So you can see that the Major Streets Transportation Improvement Program was estimated at around 14.5%. I'm gonna have to look at my hard copy here. The Transportation Development Tax, about 31%. The North Bethany Transportation System Development Charge, 32%. The County Service District for Roads, just under 20%. And then the Trust and Agency, or the funding paid by developers, was a little over 2%, or about 2%. Next slide, please. So this is a list of the projects that were in the original list, and I have a map that I'll get to here that I think will provide a little bit better rendition of what all that means. But the different funding sources are eligible for different types of public funding, and this table essentially helps to identify which funding sources, which projects is available for. I would note down at the bottom of the slide there are two projects listed there, Springville Road, essentially east of Kaiser Road, and Shackelford Road between Kaiser Road and Springville Road. Those projects are on the list but not eligible for public fund expenditures. Those are being essentially constructed by developers as construction happens. Next slide. So where are we? Next slide, please. So this is a map that we update periodically, and what it's meant to show is that within the North Bethany Service District, the blue parcels identify properties where we've had building permits issued. And so the reason that's a good slide to show is that when we collect the Transportation Development Tax and the North Bethany Transportation System Development Charge, those fees are essentially paid in conjunction with obtaining the building permit. So you can see that a significant amount of the land area has been permitted. The development of those areas has been permitted, and also now a majority of the anticipated dwelling units up there have been permitted as well. What you see in some areas are lots that you can see that don't have blue yet. Those are lots that exist or have been through the land use development entitlement process but have not had permits obtained yet. The other reason that the issuance of the permits is an interesting metric, because the county service district itself, what we're here to talk about tonight, is a property tax base for this area. And so obviously as additional development occurs, the property tax base continues to increase over time until we achieve full build out up there. Next slide. So this is that same project list, and it's just been color coded to try to indicate the relative status of the various projects that were included in that list. So the green, the solid green, if you can see the colors, indicates projects that have been completed. The purple means that we have some activity that's pending. Either the project may be in design or in construction. We have a few projects that have partial completion, and really the only project that hasn't had any activity yet is the potential bridge over Rock Creek on Shackelford Road, and that's actually outside the North Bethany area, and the construction of that will likely be contingent upon the additional, the properties to the east of North Bethany coming into the urban growth boundary and being allowed to develop. Next slide, please. Okay. So this is the map that, again, tries to sort of depict the status of the different projects that were on the list. So the different colored line segments that you see represent different projects that were included in the original funding strategy. Where you see a solid black line over those colored lines, that indicates a project that has been completed. And you can see we have projects on Springville in front of the PCC campus, 185th Avenue. Significant portions of Shackelford Road and Brugger Road have been completed, and some interim improvements have been completed on Kaiser Road south of Springville. The red dotted line on Springville is what we call Springville Phase 3. That project does have committed funding, and we anticipate bidding that project later this year for construction completion, hopefully in 2021. Next slide. So this shows you some projects where we've either had recent project completion or we have some potential activity to talk about. So I'll just sort of go from left to right on the slide. Starting in front of the PCC campus, we just recently completed what we call Springville Phase 2. That was from 181st Avenue to the PCC Rock Creek campus entrance. That was widening the road to 5 lanes, installing the traffic signal at the PCC campus. Continuing a little bit further east, we have a pedestrian crossing that was installed around 173rd in Springville. Continuing a little further east, we had a sidewalk gap project that was funded by the Urban Road Maintenance District, also completed. And I just mentioned earlier the Springville, what we call Springville Phase 3, that should be heading for construction late this year and into 2021. At the intersection of Springville Road and Kaiser, a traffic signal was installed a little over a year ago now by a developer. And then on Kaiser Road, north of Springville, Polygon, which has now been bought out by a company called Taylor Morrison, has indicated that they may be willing to undertake a voluntary improvement to that stretch of the roadway in exchange for receiving some transportation development tax and transportation system development charge credits back for the value of the work that they do there. I just checked in with them recently, and they are still interested in pursuing that voluntary improvement. But between having just been bought out by a new corporate owner and obviously with COVID, that has taken a back seat for the time being. Next slide, please. So looking back at what was approved in last year's budget, next slide, please. We recommended allocation of $900,000 or should be 0.9 million. That was allocated for design of what we're calling Springville Phase 4. That's the last remaining section kind of in the middle here between the PCC campus and Joss Avenue, widening that out to 3 lanes, adding complete bike lanes and sidewalks on both sides.
Are you saying that the 0.09 should be 0.9?
Yes, thank you. 0.9. Any questions on that? Okay, we can move ahead. So that's just a photo of the Kaiser Road to Joss section that we're planning to take to construction later this year. Currently, mostly 2 lanes with in some cases a median, some cases not. And next slide, please. So for our proposal for the 2021 budget, I'm going to ask Sheila to sort of walk us through some of the numbers in the budget, and then I'll come back and talk just a little bit more about the actual project recommendation associated with that.
All right. So the budget's pretty straightforward. As you'll see, there's a beginning fund balance and the Dirt Service District of $1.4 million. We add in some new property taxes. We anticipate $780,000, little interest earnings, but most of the funding is coming from transfers in from the North Bethany SDC fund as well as our Transportation Development Tax Fund. And then we translate those down into our expenditures, materials and supplies. We put all of our funding there for professional services. So approximately 6.4 million of that is dedicated to the two projects, Springville Kaiser to Joss for construction, and then Springville Joss to the PCC entrance for design. The remaining of funds are basically unobligated, or as we don't specifically put them in a contingency line, we put them here to allow for some flexibility during the course of the budget year, during the course of the construction of the project. And then you'll see just a little bit of the interdepartmental charges, and that's basically our staff charges as they manage the projects. And that's pretty much it for our budget. Very simple.
And I think to sort of highlight what Sheila was saying, the county service district itself is one of the revenue sources that's being used to build the projects. We typically transfer revenues into this fund, and then we house our projects and then actually expend the money out of the service district funding fund, I should say. Okay, next slide, please. So our 2021 recommendations are really very similar to what we recommended last year. We were starting to sense a little bit of concern about potential slowdowns in the housing market last year. That has certainly come to pass. There was already a pre-COVID slowdown that was happening, and certainly with COVID, having spoken with a builder recently up in this area, there's obviously been a really substantial slowdown in new housing starts and sales up in the area. We have anticipated and continue to anticipate there potentially some large credit eligible improvements that may be coming online, including the voluntary improvements on Kaiser Road and then improvements to Shackelford Road with another potentially large development. We continue to evaluate the need for potential public funding to help fill some gaps on Brugger Road and Shackelford Road. This past year, earlier this year, I believe a development application did come in for the remaining undeveloped parcel on Brugger Road that would actually complete the final sort of unimproved gap there. And the Shackelford project that would complete some of the gaps there may as well be coming online. It already has an entitlement, but the developer was in a sort of a wait and see mode in terms of demand. As I mentioned earlier, we do have what we call our Springville Phase 3 project, the improvements from Kaiser Road to Joss, improving that to 3 lanes with full bike lanes and sidewalks. We'll go to construction. We have about $5.5 million remaining expenditures on that project anticipated, and then our Phase 4 Springville project, in order to achieve the full design of that, we anticipate a total need for about $1.5 million. So our recommendation, and I apologize, it's the small blueprint there, is to allocate an additional $900,000 to complete the design engineering for the Springville Phase 4 project, Joss to PCC entrance. That would get us all the way through a complete design for the project, enable us to get a good solid cost estimate, and then to sit tight for just another year and find out how much revenues we may have in the upcoming budget year. And then obviously we would reconvene to evaluate potential project allocations for the 21-22 budget year.
Stephen, this is Sarah. Can I ask how much has been spent on design already?
Yes, the design project for Springville Phase 4, we allocated the $900,000 last year. We have not expended all of that yet this year. But we anticipate that the $900,000 that was allocated last year, plus an additional $900,000 allocated this year, will carry the project through to complete design in this upcoming fiscal year.
This is Bruce Young. I had a question about the Shackelford Gap.
Yes, sir.
I understand developers are going to be paying for that, but did they ever figure out what they were going to do about the pathing for that? Because at one point it was on hold to figure out which wetland they wanted to go through the least.
Can you go to the next map, Michael, or the next slide, please? So I apologize because we're distance here. I can't point to the slide here. When I mentioned the Shackelford gaps, if you're looking at the map, the bright green line that has some black dotted lines over portions of it on the west side of Kaiser Road.
That's what I was talking about.
Yeah, those are the gaps that I'm referring to. I think the portion that you're referencing is actually east of Kaiser Road. So it's a separate project. So the portions on the east side of Kaiser Road are going to be developed by Polygon.
So I'm talking about the Shackelford piece that connects Shackelford to Kaiser. So we have a second exit from right there. So we have a second exit from our neighborhood. Because right now the only way to get out is through that corner where Josh Bruger and the other part of Bruger come together.
Correct.
And all it takes is one nasty accident there, and then we're all stuck in our neighborhood for hours.
Right. Yeah, and I was just up there recently too, and I noticed that there are 2 additional street connections now to Kaiser Road on Ernst and I think it's Lakemont.
Yeah, they're working on them. They haven't put them through yet.
Okay. Yeah, they were open last weekend, so they just recently opened.
That'd be nice. I'll let my daughter know so when she's going to work, she can get there.
Yeah. I think those are going to be well-used outlets. So I apologize. You mentioned a wetland issue, and so there's a wetland issue on the east side of Kaiser Road with Shackelford that I thought you might be referring to.
That's the next challenge for that.
Correct.
And then, of course, the wetlands on the far side, to which I guess you say they're not even in our district, so we're not going to address it.
Right. That's one of those projects that is not eligible for public funding. It'll be a developer-funded improvement.
Which will happen when that next piece goes into the urban growth boundary.
No, these pieces are all in the urban growth boundary. It's really a function of when those adjacent properties develop. The developers will be required to construct the road improvements.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Do we have any timeline for that yet, or?
The representative for Taylor Morrison, who is the new owner of Polygon, indicated that they were hoping that they might break ground on that project that would construct at least a portion of that improvement later this summer. But again, I think there's a high degree of uncertainty out there right now.
Because we'd love to be able to drive over to 185th and fly down to our shopping.
Oh, so that portion is not, sorry, I'm still talking about on the east side of Kaiser Road.
Okay.
Yeah. So the gap between North Bethany and 185th Avenue on Shackelford Road, yeah, that is a piece that likely would be on hold until that area comes into the urban growth boundary and is allowed to develop. Yes, sir.
We were confusing each other. That's fine. Thank you.
Yeah, part of the challenge of being apart. So I think that concludes our recommendation. So really the purpose of this last slide was just to indicate again that our recommendation for funding was the $900,000 of additional funds toward completing the design and engineering for the Springville Phase 4 improvement there in the middle. And then, of course, reconvening next year to look at what the funding situation looks like and whether we may have adequate funding to move forward with some other improvements.
Excellent.
Chair, I have a question.
Yes. I call you Chairwoman Catherine Harrington.
Okay, Catherine will work for the purposes of this meeting. Chair, you and I and Commissioner Treese and possibly Dan, I think there was another person there. We participated in a North Bethany Community Service District for Roads Budget Subcommittee meeting. And that hasn't been mentioned at all. And so I'm wondering, could you please explain to me what the role of that meeting that I participated in on February 7th, according to my calendar?
Yes.
I knew a lot of this looked familiar, but
yeah, thank you. Yes, that was an oversight on my part. Thank you for reminding me. So my predecessor and the previous chair, I think, decided to convene what we were calling a subcommittee of the full budget committee. So it was the chair, the District 2 commissioner, and then the 5 community representatives sort of convened as a subcommittee. And the purpose of that subcommittee was kind of an informal sounding board to look at this larger North Bethany funding strategy and allocation of funds up there. So thinking beyond just the scope of the service district itself, but thinking about how to sort of tend to the larger implementation strategy for North Bethany. So we have convened that group 3 or 4 times, I guess, over the past several years. And I'm actually, I realized,
Do you mean for greater North Bethany, or do you mean still within the service district area?
it's really within the service district. So back to that list of 12 projects, basically, yeah, the implementation of those projects. And yes, I realized only recently here, and my apologies, I know I promised at that February meeting that I was going to do some legwork and follow up with you all, and COVID happened in the interim, and I realized I never did follow up with you on some questions that we had there. So I just pulled that memo up here just a bit ago, the meeting summary from that meeting. And I think for Mr. Young's benefit, certainly, and the other committee members that weren't able to be there, a question that had come up was whether there was some sense behind potentially looking at moving forward with at least a partial improvement of Kaiser Road over investing additional funds in completing the design for this Springville Phase 4 segment. So the memo that I should have sent you all, which I did not do, and my apologies, was to essentially reiterate that the staff recommendation, based on the information that we have from Polygon, or Taylor Morrison now, that they do still intend to at least consider strongly moving forward with the voluntary Kaiser Road improvements. That our recommendation was to just proceed with allocating the design here for the Springville Phase 4 segment. Sit on the remaining money that we have in the bank and reevaluate next year. So thank you for reminding me.
Cool.
So Chair, if there are no other questions, but if you're ready, I'm happy to make a motion.
Sorry, I was back under mute. I guess I did have we had asked for updated construction numbers because we are looking at estimates from 2011, and I'm going to assume those have increased quite a bit. And we were going to kind of cut down that list. We've been going off that list for it's been almost 10 years now. So we were going to concentrate that list a little bit more for the committee members. I think we would if we could know, have a better look at what's left and what our costs are going to be. I think that would help our committee to be able to, going forward, to be able to decide on priority of projects.
Yes, so. And I apologize. Part of the memo that I was supposed to send you, we did do what we call a cost to complete estimate for Kaiser Road improvements. Mm-hmm. And the total to go from Springville Road all the way up to Shackelford Road is about $12.5 million or so, $12 to $13 million. And that breaks out into roughly $4 to $4.5 million for the segment from Springville up to Brugger, from Brugger up to Shackelford, and then Shackelford up to Ridgeline, which is up by the K-5 school up there. So roughly $4 to $4.5 million for each of those three segments.
So for those three segments, what numbers in the project list do they correspond to?
That's what I was.
You just articulated.
Yeah, that's what I was just going back to. So that correlates to project number 6 in the project list. The original estimate in there was 7.8 million.
So
and that was
0.5.
Yeah, and I should clarify too that that segment, as it was described in the original project list, only went north to Shackelford Road. So the project I just described for you actually includes an additional segment to the north. So the original cost estimate actually was surprisingly pretty close. Had about $7.8 million in there. We're estimating in the $8 to $8.5 million range.
But that's only to Shackelford.
Up to Shackelford, correct. Yeah. So if we did an apples to apples, we would say that project number 6, Shackelford to Springville, is about $8 million.
Right, but the area there's still Shackelford to Sato Elementary, which actually has been improved.
Yes, partially. Yeah, we're getting there on that portion. And to complete that northern segment, the estimate for that was also roughly around $4 million.
Right. So a complete Springville to Germantown road is around 12 million.
No, that would be just Springville to Ridgeline, so the street at the north edge of the Sato School.
Is
Okay.
4.5.
So all the way from Springville to the school is 12.5 to 13. And the portion north of Shackelford Road up to the school is about 4 to 4.5. So I apologize.
Forward to the memo.
Yeah, and I apologize. I had intended to get that out, and I just didn't. So, but I'll be happy to share that with you all. And then I do have we did update the cost estimates last year. I'll be happy to dig those numbers up and resend them as well. We shared that last year.
Good.
But I'd be happy to send that to you as well.
I have a question going back to out of the 900,000 to complete the design on phase 4 of Springville. How much of that is being paid out of the North Bethany Service District? Is that all of our, well, I don't have the budget. We can go back a screen or something. How much of that is coming out of the North Bethany funds?
Yeah. So it's all coming from the different North Bethany funds. Was the question specifically how much from the service district fund?
Yes. Yes.
All right. I got a
Sheila's checking the numbers. Stand by.
Looks like we've only got from that fund, I think we made a previous commitment to pay $900,000 for the first $900,000 from the district itself. And then the rest of the $900,000 that we are allocating this year would be a combination of all 3 funds.
Okay. Okay, I'm just wondering how much of, the service district money is coming, or how much has been used and that kind of thing. Okay.
So if I heard you correctly, Sheila, the recommendation that's in blue on the slide that says FY 2020-21 recommendations says allocate additional $900K to complete design engineering, and that's $900K within the service district. But if I heard you correctly, it's allocate this is that second $900K, and you're saying
Correct.
it's across all 3 funds.
Correct.
Right. So I think it's a complex. This is complex. So again, we have multiple funding sources. We figure out what the need is based on project allocations. We then pull funding as available from the different funding sources. And so I don't know that we've gotten down to the specific level of detail to know exactly where that 600,000 is coming from, but in total, we've shifted funds from the North Bethany SDC fund and the TDT fund to equal the total budget allocation for the various projects.
Generally, the breakdown, as the district has started to earn its revenue, it's been about 33% from the TDT fund. The SDC funds came in quite a bit quicker, and so we had about 55%, with the remaining coming from the district.
I lost sight of which $900,000 we're talking about now. So the more information you bring on sources and whatnot isn't clarifying for me. It's really just overloading me with more information.
Yeah. Yeah, and again, I think that just points to sort of the inherent complexity of how the strategy gets implemented with the multiple funding sources coming in.
So I'm really, Chair Beachy, I'm really confused because I thought we were trying to make decisions as the North Bethany County Service District for Roads, which is this fund, as opposed to those other funds.
Correct.
And we're dealing with this as a budget committee versus making a strategic decision.
Correct. Right, but I think to Sheila's point, most of the revenues that we're proposing to expend in this fund are coming from those other funding sources. So the funds get shifted from the SDC fund and the TDT fund into the Service District for Roads fund. And that's the complexity that, you know, in terms of, so we've looked at this larger strategy. We've said, you know, X amount of dollars is needed based on availability from the different funding sources and the eligibility of these different projects. We pull money from those other funding sources to meet those needs. Yeah.
All right.
So Chair Harrington.
Not clear.
I think is your, we as this North Bethany Service District for Roads are really only authorized, and somebody clarified this for me, we're really only authorized to expend the North Bethany Service District funds. Is that, I mean, that's my, but we look at it strategically with all these other revenue sources.
Yes, yeah. So again, the proposal for the budget includes expending both funds from the property tax, the county service district for roads, as well as shifting other funding sources into it and then expending it in this particular fund budget. So the budget recommendation reflects all of that, money coming in and then money being expended on different projects.
Yeah, as reflected on page 290.
290 and
Yep.
291.
91.
Correct. Yeah. I apologize. This is a complex fund.
And just a clarification for the budget committee is that for any revenue sources that comes into this fund, actually is the authorization of this budget committee. So if there are other funds that's coming from the other funding sources that needs to be spent out of this fund, it is still the authorization for this budget committee. And one more clarification is that we do not need a motion tonight for the budget approval. That's actually for the 27th. Tonight's purpose is for the budget transmittal. And between now till the 27th is really good time to get more clarifications of any questions that you have. And you can channel that through the finance division, and we can work with the LUT on the response to any of your questions.
Yes. And I will get you the information.
So if there's no other questions from the committee at the moment, we can move on to the next step of the presentation.
Just one quick question for Stephen mainly. Just a quick question about Kaiser Road. Do you know if there have been any development or entitlement applications along that stretch between Springville and Sato Elementary for future development under the adopted master plan for mixed-use development along that stretch of Kaiser? I know there's some multifamily housing going up there, but I haven't seen anything else happening yet.
Yeah, I believe.
As far as the Main Street plan.
Right.
So my understanding is that we have had a neighborhood meeting was held by the developer that owns the property at the northwest corner of Kaiser Road and Brugger, which would be the first development in that Main Street area. But I don't know what the status of an actual application is at this point.
I attended, they came to the CPO meeting, and I don't recall what month it was now. Probably January, February, the developers there, they're local developers. And they had a little meeting about what would the community like to see? This is the plan that we have. This is the sketch that we have for a development, and what would you like to see in there?
And my most current knowledge of this is that they have not submitted a development application, but I can just confirm that.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, because they were talking about starting development this summer. I guess I do have a general budget, and maybe this is maybe this is to come, but just, obviously our revenues, how are we looking? I mean, with COVID and everything, how are our revenues looking as far as the future and things? What are your expectations?
I would say, and I think this probably holds true for many of the funds in the budget this year, many of the projections were done pre-COVID. I think we all understand there are going to be impacts. What we don't really know yet is how severe they will be. So again, I think that reinforces the importance of the sort of conservative pay-as-you-go approach that we have proposed, and not committing funds that we don't have at this point, essentially. So that was the course that we suggested last year, and we clearly, given the degree of uncertainty at this point right now, we think that's a good strategy to continue with. And we're just going to be looking to find out, along with everybody else, just what the fallout from the COVID pandemic is.
Right, you're just not, but I didn't think that we were in such a severe situation. Our immediate revenues aren't going to be impacted. It's going to be, looking at things next year, but it's not going to be a school, like the school situation right now, so.
Well, yeah. So again, a lot of the revenues that come into this fund are predicated on development occurring. And so as housing starts potentially slow down, depending on the extent and the duration of that certainly will affect the revenues from the transportation development tax, and the system development charge may also slow down growth in the property tax as well.
Yeah, it doesn't, strangely, from the realtor friends and things, I mean, it's still a good market out there. So, and just walking around as we can locally, things are still being bought up around here. So, but hopefully it'll stay that way. Okay, we can move on to the next section if anybody else has any questions.
Okay, so as next step goes, next slide, please. So the next budget committee meeting is for May 27th, and that will be the public hearing for the service district's budget for North Bethany County Service District for roads. And if there's any public attendees for today's meeting, I just wanted to reiterate that there isn't a public comment period designed for this meeting, but as a May 27th meeting, that's where the public hearing happens. And that meeting is at 5:30 p.m., North Bethany County Service District for roads. It will be in the auditorium here physically, as well as available via Zoom. So for any public attendees that wants to make a public testimony, please sign up for public testimony on our website where the meeting announcements is at. And we do have a public testimony time certain for 6 p.m. on May 27th. The meeting will start at 5:30 and public testimony will start at 6 p.m. Is there any questions about the next meeting from the Budget Committee?
I don't have a question. I just wanted to note, for the benefit of the 5 commissioners here, that day is a Wednesday. So don't worry. We will not have a marathon extended work session that day like we have today. Yes, very good.
Yes. All right, next slide, please. Next slide. All right, that's the end of the presentation. And Chair Beachy, would you like to adjourn the meeting?
I do have one quick question. As far as public testimony, if a person can't be there in person or doesn't want to attend in person, do we have a procedure in place?
Correct. We do have a web page at our meeting notice on our website that's dedicated to guide any public on how to make a testimony via Zoom. And
Okay.
If you know of anyone, that, you can definitely forward them our way, and we can definitely provide over the phone instructions as well.
Okay, just want to make sure that no one thinks they have to show up in public.
Yep, absolutely.
So, okay, any questions? We've had a couple. Morali, you've been quite quiet. Just want to make sure we've covered everything for you.
We've been looking at one another here in the room to see if we have questions to help flag them for you, but we don't have any.
Okay.
I'm good.
I don't have any questions either, but I do want to thank Sarah for taking on the role of chair again. So thank you for that.
Thank you, guys. All right. If we see no further questions, we can adjourn until the 27th.
All right.
Great. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
See you in a couple weeks.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
All right, thank you.
Do I have to call back? I can just stay on, right?
Yes.
Yes, Pam. Yep.
I know, that's what I was. There was a whole world before.
Deja vu.
I apologize. I had drafted the memo and everything, and I was 99% sure I sent it, and I asked my assistant to pick it up for me. Well, I apologize. I felt completely unprepared tonight. Thank you. Thank you.
Bye.
Is that what's up next, Chair? Oh, well then I'll sit down.
It said sheriff's enhanced, that's what it said a minute ago.
Oh, that's nice. Yeah, I'll call you, text you.
Okay.
Thank you, Jerry.
For those of you on Zoom, we're going to get going at 6:45.
Hey, how are you? Nice to see you. Hello, hello. Thank you for being here.
Or is it Daniel Hauser?
Yeah. Yeah, this is brand new stuff. We just got it. Race, ready.
Is Commissioner Treese the only committee member we have on Zoom?
No, you have Commissioner Rogers as well and Daniel Hauser.
Great. Okay. Thank you.
Still here.
Awesome. Thank you, Pam.
I'll turn it back, my camera on when you're ready to go.
Yeah, I'm here as well.
All righty. Well, I think we have everyone here in the room. So are you folks ready? Okay. So this is Chair Catherine Harrington. I'm going to call the Budget Committee meeting for the Enhanced Sheriff's Patrol District and Urban Road Maintenance District to order. One of the very first things on our agenda, if we could go to the second slide, is to welcome all of you. I particularly want to welcome our three newest members to the committee. We have Stephen Barron, Ray Eck, and Melissa Laird. Thank you to the three of you for joining the committee. Anthony Mills was reappointed as well. We have a few members of our budget committee out attending through Zoom today. So why don't we go first and have you all introduce yourselves and say hello. And first, I see at the top window is Commissioner Pam Treese.
Good evening, and thank you for being here. I'm looking forward to this budget discussion, and I appreciate the opportunity to see everybody in the room and those of you that are on Zoom.
Turning it over to you, Mr. Hauser. I was hoping you'd also introduce us to your coworker who you had there real briefly.
Yes, my name's Daniel Hauser. That was Ogden, my son, who has been accompanying me on many Zoom calls over the last 8 weeks or however, 3 years, however long we've been doing this. I'm a lay member of the DSPD Budget Committee, and also I'm grateful to have served for a while on DAC. And so I'm ready to admit that I have a better understanding of than the SPD, which always makes these meetings especially both enjoyable and educational. And this is my second time second year being on the Budget Committee.
And Commissioner Rogers is taking us mobile.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I'm here. Nice to see everyone. I normally in my office with much different cameras. I'm sitting in my house right now. And anyway, nice to see you.
Well, great. We'll go around the room next. Stephen, would you like to start?
Yes, thank you for having me as a new member here, and I'm the chair right now of the Park and Rec Committee. So glad to be aboard another committee. Thank you.
Jerry Willey, County Commissioner.
Oops, sorry, I forgot to explain. You have to hit the little button. Ta-da.
Ray Eck, the chair of ERMDEC.
Great. And this is Catherine Harrington, one of the members of the commission.
And I'm Anthony Mills, and as it was pointed out, I've just been reappointed. I was on for 3 years, and I'm on a 2-year appointment this time.
Dick Scouten on the Washington County Board of Commissioners, representing the Lower Beaverton and Cooper Mountain area.
Melissa Laird, a new member of the committee, so I'm happy to be here and pleased to be part of this committee.
Great. And why don't we have our main staff principal say hello as well?
Steve Rhodes, Interim County Administrator.
And my name is Jack Liang. I'm the CFO of Washington County.
Gentlemen, just say hello.
Hello, Sheriff Pat Garrett.
And Under Sheriff Sean Fisher.
Great, great. So that's the very first item on our agenda. And what we need to do next for our committee is to elect a committee chair to run the remainder of the committee. Is there a committee member who would like to serve as the chair?
How about Anthony taking the chair?
I'd be happy to. I was the chair last year. If anyone else would like to be it, or, I mean, typically it's a lay member, but certainly a commissioner could be, or the chair of the commission could be it. She prefers.
I think I heard a motion to nominate Anthony Mills as our chair. I would second that.
I didn't hear him turn it down.
I did not turn it down.
So all those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries unanimously.
Okay, well, thank you. I guess the next topic is review and adoption of the budget hearing procedures. Do I hear anybody that moves that we adopt the hearing procedures as we have printed out on paper before us?
Chair Mills, we have quite a few new members on the budget committee. I'd be happy to actually provide a little highlight and walk everybody through the procedure.
Do that then.
All right. Thank you. So welcome, everyone. So for the participants on Zoom, you should have an email from me earlier today with this budget procedure in your email inbox. I just sent it also to Pam and Roy. So you guys should have that in your inbox as well. So the Enhanced Sheriff's Patrol District and Urban Road Maintenance District are special districts and component units of Washington County. The district's budget must be approved separately from the Washington County budget. The ESPD and the URMD committee members include the Board of Commissioners and lay members Stephen Barron, Raymond Eck, Daniel Hauser, Melissa Laird, and Anthony Mills. The May 12th, 2020 committee meeting, which is today's meeting, includes a budget overview by Washington County staff. And the overview is broken down into the ESPD portion and the URMD portion. So based on ORS 294, 426, and 428, which governs the budget committee meetings and the budget hearings, at the budget committee meeting, the process is to receive the budget message and the proposed budget document. And of course, staff includes a budget presentation that discuss about what is in the proposed budget document. And then at the budget hearing, which is scheduled this year on May 27th, Wednesday, is to provide the member of the public with an opportunity to ask questions and comment on the budget document. Approve the budget as submitted by the budget officer or as revised by the budget committee. The budget document as approved by the budget committee shall specify the ad valorem property tax amount or rate for all funds. So the budget is available online as a link provided in the procedure, and any questions should be forwarded to the Chief Finance Officer at finance_budget@co.washington.or.us or by phone at 503-846-8756. So the first opportunity for public testimony is the May 27th, we got a typo there, we'll get that fixed. May 27th, 2020 budget hearing. Second opportunity is scheduled for the June 16th Board of Commissioner meeting, which is the date for formal board adoption. The May 27th public hearing will be formatted as the following. The staff will present and budget overview at the 27th meeting as well. It will be a shortened version of today's presentation. And then upon completion of the budget overview, the budget committee chair will first offer an opportunity for budget committee questions. Upon completion of the budget committee questions, the budget committee chair will solicit public testimony. Public testimony will be limited to 3 minutes per person, except for representatives from regional and community-based organizations where testimony is limited to 10 minutes per organization. Upon completion of the budget review process, a motion and vote are required by the Budget Committee to approve the Enhanced Sheriff's Patrol District budget, including any changes by the Budget Committee, and levy tax. A separate motion and vote are required by the Budget Committee to approve the Urban Road Maintenance District's budget, including any changes by the Budget Committee and levy taxes. I just wanted to point out that we have opened the question channel for the Washington County's budget, including all of the special districts. So the question does not have to wait for the 27th. Any public member or budget committee member can ask questions from this point up until the 27th before you take committee actions. So just wanted to point that out. Is there any questions from the budget committee about the budget hearing procedure? All right, I'll hand it back to Chair Mill.
Chair Mills?
Yes.
Can I just ask, could we confirm that Mr. Hauser has received the slides and the...
Yes, Mr. Hauser, did you receive the slides approximately about an hour ago? I got them right before I left. Were you able to see those documents emailed to you?
By slides, are you talking about the DSPD packet?
Yes.
Yes.
Slide deck. Okay. Then yes, I did. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, so we have our procedures amended with the correct year 2020. Do I hear a motion to adopt?
So moved.
It's been moved. Do I have a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstentions? Okay, that passes. Thank you. Mr. CFO, did you want to say anything about the service districts of Washington County, which is the next? Okay.
Yes, next slide, please. Thank you. So Washington County, I just wanted to provide a quick overview for the Budget Committee about Washington County special districts. We have 4 special districts, service districts that's in Washington County, including the Enhanced Sheriff's Patrol District, Urban Road Maintenance District, North Bethany County Service District for roads, and Service District for lighting number 1. And today at this meeting, we're focusing on the ESPD, URMD, and which is included in the proposed budget summary on from page 286 to page 289. So that's the purpose for this budget committee. And is there any questions about the county's special districts? Yep. Let's move to the next slide. Without further ado, I would like to pass the mic to Sheriff Garrett and to get us started with the ESPD budget presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Liang. Thank you, Chair Mills. My name is Pat Garrett. I'm the Washington County Sheriff. I'm joined today by Under Sheriff Sean Fisher. We thank our new committee members and our sincere gratitude to all of the ESPD committee members for your service to the district. Under Sheriff Fisher and I today, it's our pleasure to present our budget request presentation. We're going to walk through just a little bit of history of the district, provide some measures of work, some measures of performance, I have a few comments about recruiting. I'm going to provide an overview of our budget request, and then I'm going to make some comments about, just very briefly, the general fund and the public safety local option levy budget as it relates to ESPD. They're a bit interrelated, and there's just a couple of important points that are worth mentioning. So if we could go to the next slide, please. One more. The Enhanced Sheriff's Patrol District includes the more densely populated areas, as you know, that exist outside the cities but inside the urban growth boundary and require a higher level of police services than the rural parts of the county, the rest of the county that's outside the cities. And it's been our pleasure to provide services in the district for over 30 years. Before ESPD was established in 1987, staffing in the rural areas, or all areas outside the city, we're about a half an officer per thousand. And for the urban unincorporated area, that just was not sufficient. The Board of Commissioners at that time recommended the need to ask residents if they wanted to fund a higher level of service just to get themselves to an urban service provider when it came to police services. And they settled on a staffing level of about 1 officer per thousand. And that seems to have stood the test of time as being an effective staffing level for the district. Voters soon thereafter, in 1987, formed the district and voted to provide services ever since. Slide, please. The communities listed on the right are the communities that are served by the district that we recognize as being part of Washington County. The map of Washington County on the left, the yellow is the Enhanced Sheriff's Patrol District, the blue are our cities, and then that lighter colored gray are, of course, the rural areas outside the urban growth boundaries. So you can kind of get a sense for where the district is. Kind of ground zero tends to be Aloha. That's where the district really started, and we've had enormous growth, as you know, as well as we do, north of Highway 26. And right now, the district's estimate population is about 235,000 residents. So it's a significant community, actually communities, that it's been our pleasure to serve. Slide, please. These are just some measures of work that district deputies and our professional staff provide in the district as it relates to countywide sheriff's office work. So if you just take the top line, in 2019, we responded to or engaged in 119,341 countywide calls. That's self-initiated and public demand. Of those incidents, 68,000, or about 57%, were within the district. Just generally speaking, the incidents that deputies in the district respond to, about 2/3 are public demand and 1/3 are self-initiated. We kind of like that because having 1/3 self-initiated gives us a chance to look for intoxicated drivers or establish relationships with businesses and the community. And we're not constantly responding to calls. So that works pretty well for us. About 12% of the calls that we do respond to on public demand are priority 1s and 2s. So we're running lights and sirens just about to 12%. Reports written, we write a lot of reports. The old saying, if you didn't write it down, it didn't happen, that's kind of true when it comes to policing. And about 70% of our record staff who process documents, reports, citations, is spent processing and maintaining these records. And over the last 5 years, the number of reports that deputies have generated have increased 25%. So that's a workload indicator for deputies. They're doing a good job at memorializing what's happening in their day-to-day or night-to-night business in the community. And then our record staff is keeping up processing those reports. In 2019, we averaged 49 arrestees booked in jail every day. And our deputies account for about half of that. We were not able to split that out, district and non-district. But with respect to our mental health response team, they responded to about almost 1,500 calls in 2019. And 84% of those calls were calls from within the district. So they've been busy inside the district. Abandoned auto complaints. My thanks to the Board of Commissioners for passing the ESPD ordinance in 2018 to address what was a really compelling problem. It generated a lot of calls. Abandoned vehicles who didn't have a plate, parked and never moved, large vehicles that were kind of a borderline safety hazard. In the district, we responded to several hundred vehicle complaints in 2019. And if you measure the complaints we received from 2018 to 2019, those declined by 32%, in my view, because we have the tools that we need to address that problem that we didn't have before. And also in 2019, the Sheriff's Office personnel and partner agencies received a total of 38,000 hosted training hours. Most of these hours were at the Public Safety Training Center and enabled us to invite outside instructors to our training center and then have open enrollment where other agencies could join and receive training. And that training center just makes that available in ways that we had not had before. Slide, please. This slide is a depiction of person crimes from the FBI's National Incident-Based Reporting System. That is their new crime rate reporting system. It gets rid of the legacy uniform crime reports, and it's much, much improved. For example, the old system had a hierarchy way of categorizing crimes. It just recorded the highest crime if there were multiple crimes in a single incident. The National Incident-Based Reporting System has up to 10 offenses per incident. The old system had 10 offense classifications. This new system has 52. So it's very, very rich in data. And starting at the top, this is, as you see, 2016, 17, and 18. The blue line at the top represents the crime rate in the United States. The green line below that is the crime rate for City B. City A and City B are the two largest cities in the county. The orange line below that is the statewide crime rate for person crimes. The purple line is another city in our county. And then the yellow line at the bottom is the unincorporated Washington County crime rate. That's important for the district because 85% of public demand calls for service outside the cities come from the district. It's a reasonable indicator of the crime rate in the district to look at unincorporated crime rate, which makes it appropriate to say, on average, an ESPD resident is about 1/3 less likely to be a victim of a person crime than the average Oregonian, and about 1/2 less likely than the average person residing in the United States, and less than the two largest cities in the county. It's true that person crimes are up. You can see that from the yellow line, from 16 to 18. It's less than City E, City A, City B is holding steady, which makes support to the district, as well as the Public Safety Local Option Levy, really, really important right now so that we can keep up with this rapidly growing and large and rich and diverse county that brings some public safety challenges along with it. Slide, please. This is the same system, only representing property crimes. And the difference here is even more striking than property crimes. This data suggests, on average, an ESPD resident is less than 1/2 as likely to be a property crime victim than the average Oregonian, and about 2/3 less likely when compared to the national rate, which is good news. Slide, please. Here we show how funding for the fiscal year 2021 is distributed among the various functional areas of the Sheriff's Office, to include jail, patrol, investigations, services, and a category at the top called Other. Other represents smaller funds like contract services, court security, entrance security to the courthouse, grants and donations, jail commissary, and forfeitures. All of these funds make up our total request across all funds to be $131 million. That's all funds. That's a 4.9% increase over this current fiscal year. Of all of our funds, about 43% support patrol operations. They're in the center of your slide. On this slide, you can see a breakout on the far right of these three funds that support patrol operations, and District Patrol is the largest portion of our patrol budget. And before we dive just one layer deeper into that budget, just a word about the General Fund patrol budget. General Fund represents about 25% of the patrol budget, supports 101 certified deputies. There's no personnel adds this year in the General Fund budget because of budget constraints, which you're all very familiar with. Public Safety Local Option Levy represents about 18% of the patrol budget and supports 49 law enforcement certified deputies, and there are 3 deputy adds to our request this year on that budget because of population growth. Slide, please.
So just to clarify, this budget committee meeting is just dealing with the yellow box that says District Patrol.
That's correct. Yes, Chair. Thank you. Our ESPD budget request, again, that's what we're all here for today. Request is $32.9 million. That's up 9.5% from this current fiscal year. The vast majority, 69% of the ESPD budget covers personnel costs. 5% is for materials and supplies. 26% is in a category marked Other, which that includes our dispatch fees, some interdepartmental costs, operating transfers out for some facilities projects, and capital outlay, which I'll dive a little bit deeper here in a minute. The chart reflects highlights of the 1920, the difference between the 1920 request And the main driver for the requested increase is personnel and capital outlay. So we'll dive just a little bit deeper into each one of those. The personnel side of this budget request, it represents an 8.4 increase from last year's personnel budget request. It supports 150.6 full-time staff. That's 128 certified deputies and 22.6 non-certified staff. This budget request adds 6 full-time deputies due to population growth and 1 criminal record specialist, 2. The increasing cost of PERS benefits, along with opening up Step F, that's that 6th step in the pay structure, are also significant contributors to the increase. Materials and services, the 5% there at the top. That's a 2.7% increase from last year. It's accounted for by materials and supplies requests to include $44,000 driven by some fleet operation and maintenance costs. Other maintenance and supplies remain at or below current funding, and they support ammunition, training, defensive tools, supplies, and small tools. The other category is up 14.2% compared to this current fiscal year. And that includes our dispatch fees of $1.1 million for this entire next fiscal year. And that cost is actually down a bit after our dispatch center did a costing and rebalancing across all users. Interdepartmental costs are set, as you know, by county allocation plan, and this totals $5.4 million. Transfers out, $60,000 include facilities projects for East Precinct and Bethany, our lobbies. The majority of that is for some ballistic glass at the counter, which actually now also account for some COVID-19 protection. And then capital outlay supports vehicle procurement and replacement of aging vehicles. We have 27 vehicles in this budget request to meet replacements for end of life and to support population adds for several new vehicles. I also want to point out that we are on track this fiscal year to return about 5.1% of our budgeted ESPD funds back to the parent fund. One of our strategic goals is to be fiscally responsible. Last fiscal year, we returned 7.9% of unspent district funds to the parent fund. In the previous year, 6.2%. That's between $1.5 and $2 million at the end of the year that we returned back to the parent fund. Please.
So looking at this slide, I understand the personnel and the materials on the right-hand side correspond to the other part. But under other, is it only capital outlays that you have an increase in?
We have an increase in inter-fund expenditures of about 1.2%, very modest. And a WACA charge is a decrease of 9%. And the overall increase of 4.2% really amounts to capital outlay as the big driver.
So that would be the number that represents the portion of the pie called other.
Right, those multiple categories, right? Dispatch, interdepartmental, transfers out, capital outlay.
Okay.
So actually what we're talking about is the district patrol fund, which is also funded through the local option levy. So we haven't gotten to the ESPD only part.
This is only ESPD. That's all we're talking about right now.
But if I go to page 286, which is just ESPD, it has a different set of figures, which is what I was trying to point out.
I see. Okay.
So, yeah.
So for clarification reasons, is that the revenue is collected?
District patrol here is just ESPD. You were describing this whole stack.
I was.
Which is District Patrol Fund 180, whatever, 182.
So for clarification, if I may attempt to answer the question, is that ESPD is actually the revenue collection fund for the tax coming in, and then the mechanism of running the operation is that the operation actually resides in the district patrol fund,
So
which
what you said
ESPD
earlier
transfers.
in terms of what pages is a different section of the budget than what he's pointing to.
Absolutely, and that is definitely any improvement we can make to the presentation. Yeah.
You're absolutely right, Chair. That is,
Correction, that's all.
Yes.
that is Fund 182, as you say.
I'm with you. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm caught up with you now. I'm on the right page.
Slide. Our undersheriff is going to cover just a little bit of some of our other work that the district deputies do and are involved in.
Thank you, Sheriff, and good evening, Chair Mills and committee members. Thank you for the opportunity to be here and just talk about a couple of important things that actually came up last year, and we wanted to follow up with you. We mentioned that the Public Safety Training Center was coming online. We really appreciate the support for getting that going, and we just wanted to report that we're in full operation there. It's going wonderful. It is quickly becoming a highly regarded regional asset, and we just wanted to highlight a few things. You already heard that we had over 38,000 student hours of hosted training delivered through the Public Safety Training Center, in addition to other internal training that we offer. And those offerings don't just include our staff. That's partner agencies who have members on special teams that get training through the training center. We've opened it up to members of the community through at least one class called Power Curves, which is a very popular self-defense class. We've had various members from different departments in the county training out of there, out of the training center, county counsel's office, health and human services, parole and probation, and of course facilities runs the building, and so they've been in there training on the equipment so that they know how to take care of it for us. It's just turned out to be a wonderful building and center for us. We have it staffed with 16 full-time staff members, and wanted to just follow up with you on the good work that's happening there. Another thing that came up, next slide, last year was our recruiting efforts, and we wanted to just give you a flavor for what we've been up to this past year, and it's not unique to this year. We've been doing this, we've had a recruiting team for a number of years, and they're really focused on recruiting for a diverse population that's representative of our county demographics, and of course, we have some room to improve in that area, but we are making headway. And you know, the picture that you're seeing here, one of the efforts that we are involved with is this group called Mente. It's a group that serves Latinx males, high school, college age, most typically. And this slide and on the next slide as well, pictures from an event that was at Linfield College. We're really proud of the work that our recruiting team is putting together. And just a snapshot of that team, it's supervised by Sergeant Tony Shaddy, and we have one full-time deputy who's our recruiter, Amanda Geislinger, and 14 collaterally assigned recruiters as well. The deputy you see in the picture there, that's Alan Pinto, and he's not actually on the recruiting team, but has a passion for this, and I can see him become a member of that team as well at some point in the future. He has a real way with people, and you can see, I think that picture says more than I could about the work he does with the people he engages. The next slide, you'll see another picture of Deputy Daniel Guzman. It's the same event, and you can see how large that room is. Mente, we've done several events with them, and what I hear is it's standing room only every time. So we're pleased with that effort. That's just one of the many efforts that we're making to reach into diverse communities. Next slide. Another diverse population we're reaching out to is our military communities. This is some photos from our trip down to Camp Pendleton in California, where we actually took our testing to them instead of normally they come here or find a local place where they can take our national testing network. It's an online test. But we took it to them, and as a matter of fact, we were able to even extend a job offer to one of the folks that we engaged with in that effort. We're also working similarly with Joint Base Lewis McChord, and just to give you a flavor for some of the other events that we're participating in this year, and actually I'll caveat that. Because of COVID-19, some of these events have been either postponed or canceled, but these were the things that were on our plate for this year. The 30th Annual Cesar Chavez Leadership Conference, the Portland Women's Expo, Military and Veteran Networking Expo, the 2020 Physical Training Championships, Oregon Trades Women's 2020 Career Fair, Portland Pride, Beaverton Pride. And we also have some pretty exciting and growing relationships with Sacramento State University. They have a very large and diverse criminal justice program, and we're working closely with them. We're working with Western Oregon University. And in fact, later this month, we have a 3-day online event where they're going to be getting some virtual tours of our jail, of our training center, and then having interaction with several of our staff online. We're also working with Pacific University and their career night, and the list goes on. So you can see we're really reaching out. We're trying to do a good job of finding folks who represent our county, and we want them to feel not only needed by us, but accepted and invited into our organization. That's the good work of our recruitment team. The last thing I wanted to talk about, next slide. You can put this one into the category of maybe pre-recruiting. We've been offering Kids Safety Academy for a number of years. This past year, I'll say, we expanded that into the summertime. We offered two safety academies this past summer, one in Bethany, one in Aloha. I think the picture there is the Bethany event. It's a pretty neat program. We offer it to 5th graders getting ready to go into middle school. And in this case, it was 1.5 hours per day over a week for each of the different classes. And they have a pretty rich curriculum. Talk about 911, how to use that, personal safety, particularly when they're home alone, navigating internet safety, water safety, bike safety, fire safety, drugs and alcohol, leadership, integrity. The list goes on. It's a very rich program. I think the biggest benefit, in addition to some good programming for the kids, I think the real benefit is for them to connect and build relationships with our staff, and to be able to see themselves in this work at some point in the future, to give them something to look forward to. So we're excited about that. We just wanted to follow up with you on those couple of things that had come up as questions last year. So thank you.
If I might, I just want to encourage you and everyone in the organization. We know it's a really tough time with COVID-19, and you've worked really hard to reduce the contacts and the numbers and all of the safety measures. With everything that we're learning about the phase 1 and phase 2 portions of the reopening strategy, if your kids' safety camp is 25 kids or less, you might be able to put that on this summer. So I just want to egg you on, so to speak. Right. I'm really trying to champion that. Let's try and have some of these programs and don't just miss summer altogether. So if we can be of any help on that.
I second that egging on.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Avoid closure if we can.
Another comment that I know all the CPOs really express thanks for all of your help, that you come to all our CPO meetings, and that we have one representative there that's all the time, spends all our time there and helps coordinate different things.
Okay.
It's a great pleasure to have you there.
Thanks, Mr. Eck.
Thanks.
Slide? Oh, go ahead, Chair.
Looks like you have a couple more to go.
Thank you, Chair. When deputies encounter a victim or someone who's at risk, who's a senior, they have a wonderful resource in our own Elder Safe Specialist. And this is one of those cases in Aloha. In the summer of 2019, a 60-year-old female was unfortunately taken advantage of by an overseas online scammer, and she gave away about $300,000 in this scam before her financial advisor alerted us really to, and her family to, his concerns. Our Elder Safe Specialist, who deals with this more often than we might want to think, connected with our victim, took a bit of convincing that this person was not really who she thought this person was, and with the help of the Oregon Senior Peer Outreach, which is an organization in Washington County that has some peer seniors who have some experience with this, they got together with this resident and helped her come to terms and sever ties completely with these scammers. And it's just a really wonderful resource that we have to help our seniors. Slide, please. The district also has a really wonderful relationship with the Raleigh Hills Business Association, the Cedar Mill Business Association, and the Aloha Business Association. And these associations help fund Shop with a Cop. So every December, to help our underrepresented kids make sure that they have something that they can count on as a gift, right? And gift giving for their family members. And this is a picture of soon-to-be jail commander Caprice Massey, who's at our Shop with a Cop last December with one of our community kids. It's a really wonderful experience, and it helps kind of have a positive interaction with kids while they're young. In case they see them in some other circumstances that we are somebody they can trust and establish a relationship with. And our Raleigh Hills Business Association was there shoulder to shoulder with us. They helped us shop. They helped prep the school, the Raleigh Hills Elementary School, for the after shopping decoration party. It was wonderful. The last slide. This is just a picture of Deputy Natalie Huggins. Started out as a search and rescue explorer, was hired first as a jail services technician, then she was a jail deputy. Now she's an awesome patrol deputy. Now, before we go, I just want to make a couple of comments about the proposed budget book. On page 18, there is a reference to Public Safety and Justice budget. It's a general fund budget, and under Sheriff's Office at the bottom of the page, it references that this general fund budget for the Sheriff's Office is very conservative. Page 18, and that's true, it's very conservative. It also, in the second to the bottom paragraph, it references a 10-hour shift that we've been able to institute in the jail. And I just want you to know that it wasn't that we took the jail schedule and we just came up with 10-hour shifts and plopped it down across the organization. It took about 18 months of analysis to match up workload with staffing, and where was that peak workload, where, given the positions that we had, could we make the best, most effective, most efficient use of a 10-hour schedule to increase our work-life balance for our staff. And we socialized it with our staff. We had some mock kind of run proof of concept runs, and we pulled the trigger on it, and we had it for 2 weeks before COVID hit. And granted, it's only 2 weeks of normal, if you will, but the feedback I got as I walked through the jail was very encouraging, very positive, and we're enthusiastic about that move. The next page, let's see here. I also wanted to say, with respect to the jail, there are some priorities at the bottom of that second paragraph from the bottom. We're going to add in the adopted budget book that the ongoing COVID-19 threat, that is priority one for the jail, is to keep that staff healthy, to keep our adults in custody healthy, and that is just going to take constant focused attention. They're doing a great job in there, but going forward for this next fiscal year, that is going to be probably job one for us in the jail. The following page, it does address some budget constraints, limits and programs on the law enforcement side. Our original request was trimmed by about $750,000. it does say in here that that limits programs to include our expansion of our body-worn cameras. And I'm here to tell you, if we don't find a grant that we can fund this expansion into next year, I'm going to spend the money, which means about 270, 300 grand to continue that program rollout. But that means our return at the end of the year might be just a little bit less than it has been before. Instead of 6%, it might be something less than that, or instead of 5%, something a little bit less than that. That's a priority for us going forward. I just wanted to make sure that that was on the record and that you were aware of that. And with that, we'd love to answer any questions that you have.
I would like to encourage our telecommuting participants, if you have anything, I'd love to hear from you now before the people here speak.
Anthony, this is Roy. I don't know whether myself or Pam are up next, but I do have a question.
You're up next, Roy.
Great. Thank you. Sheriff Pat, the question I have, and it's really, I guess, for my edification, maybe more than anybody else's, but if you remember back, and you may have been with the Sheriff's office at that time, we did the Enhanced Sheriff's Patrol District simply to enhance the level of service that we had at that time, and of course it continued on to today. And we have Major 34296 out to, and that's a different fund, I know, but it all kind of blends together. But we have 34296, which will really pick up a lot of your costs. If the underlying pinnings of the Enhanced Patrol District, this ESPD, is a robust or a completely staffed sheriff's district, if we don't have that funding in those other places, is the ESPD budget going to be impacted? Again, this is enhancement. It's a layer up. It's not meant to be the only source of patrol in those districts. So how, if at all, will that be impacted by that election?
If the public safety local option levy is not continued, that represents about 0.2 deputies per thousand. So instead of about 1 deputy per thousand in the district, it'd be about 0.8, right? So it'd be, the service level would drop. And that may not sound like a lot, but it would be noticeable. Let's see, I think I said there is 49 certified deputies that are funded through the public safety local option levy. So that's just really important for us to continue. Certainly ask voters to think seriously about that when they vote on continuing those services. That would be a reduction in services if that didn't continue.
Anthony, if I could just follow up with Pat. So is there any plan at all to change some of the program costs just to beef them up in the event that were not to pass? And again, I'm not being a pessimist at all, just being a realist and understanding it. And Jack can go through this as well. And on the 294 section of the local budget law and statute, we can't really tinker with a budget a lot without having a supplemental if we adopt this by June 30th or shortly thereafter, or shortly before, I should say. So you've had historical carryovers beginning fund balance. Should we be appropriating more of that just to be safe, and then we don't have to come back with a supplemental budget?
Yeah, hey Roy, I'll chime in to answer this question. Is as far as supplemental budget goes, is we are still in the process of getting year-end estimates right now. So before the budget is adopted, and we are definitely going to bring in fund balance carryovers into next year. So the number actually may settle a little bit more if the beginning fund balance is for next year is going to end up being higher than our projections. Is that the clarification you're looking for?
Sort of, but I'm not going to belabor this too much. But oftentimes people put in contingency, they carry over balances, and if we had a problem, and again, this is Roy being a conservative CPA, but if you have a problem, I think you want to appropriate so we don't have to take a supplemental budget into the next year, which would be after July. You're talking about a supplemental budget potentially for the 1920. I'm talking about the 2021 period. So should we be just appropriating everything so we're okay at this point. So for the committee and anybody listening, this is probably a little too technical, but I just saw that, and it looked to me like we ought to be planning for the worst case, hoping for the best, and we're all supporters of the levy, but I think I'd appropriate most of what I had just to be safe. I'll stop with that.
So if I might, the public safety levy that is currently in place expires in June of 2021. So if the replacement does not pass in May of 2020, we have 2 more election cycles before us. So that is why, following past practice of the county, the board throws all of its political capital behind passage the first time in the hopes that you don't have to then use the intervening time to do worst case scenario planning. But if you have to go through worst case scenario planning, we have time programmed in to do that.
Good point. I agree.
Thank you.
I have a follow-up question. If you could talk a little more, Sheriff, about the body cameras and why you think that's such an important piece that you're willing to sort of deviate from the normal practice and return 5 to 6% pure budget back to the general.
Yeah, it is a transparency enhancement. It is a way to gather more higher quality evidence in certain cases. And we've begun a deployment cycle. We couldn't do it in one fell swoop because it's really expensive, and I don't want to lose steam and delay the rollout. We have deputies who enjoy and are ready to wear the cameras. I mean, we already know people are filming us, so why don't we just do it as well? Of course, there are parameters and notifications and warnings, and there's a significant amount of back-end work to manage that video, to purge it when it needs to be purged, to provide it for discovery. And the Oregon legislature helped us out significantly writing statewide protocols for it. But it does take a lot of management. And so while we're rolling it out in a measured way, just don't want to lose momentum.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else have any questions? You go ahead. Oh. Well, I opened it to them, but Mr. Hauser or Commissioner Treese, do you have anything that you'd like to ask at this time?
I'm fine, thank you.
Okay.
I had a question that has a fairly narrow impact, but I'm just kind of curious if there's a simple explanation. When I looked at the more detailed budget proposal, I saw that the assessed value for ESPD was going to go up about 4.25%. And I saw that the estimated increase in property tax revenues that we're listing in the budget was 5%, right? So a fairly small difference and probably not particularly meaningful. But I guess I'm just curious if there's a simple explanation for why there's a difference between those two values.
Hi, Daniel. As far as the assessed value goes, because ESPD and the county overall covers a different area, so we definitely use some past trend and from those two areas to do the projection, and that's part of the difference. And the county-wide assessed value is usually done by my department in finance, and then the ESPD is usually done in collaboration with the sheriff's office team. So it's a two separate process, and we look at the trends in those specific areas for the projections.
Okay, and I was looking at the ESPD specific percent change that was on, what's that, page 307. And so maybe that's still the answer, right? That we use different methods of forecasting to try and resolve that the estimated growth year over year. And so maybe that's fine.
Yeah, because the reality is they cover different areas. So it's not exactly the same amount of properties that they're getting assessed on. So depending on the geographic areas, some areas within Washington County grows faster than the others.
But also, the growth rate is one thing. The ability to tax, the tax rate, is going to be capped and limited due to certain laws and constraints. So they're not always going to be the same numbers.
Right. And so wouldn't assessed value estimates be already having that cap implemented?
So the assessed value is basically purely based on the assessed value of properties. So it really depends on the property amount growth. And then the revenue that's collected on top of that, it depends on a variety of factors of the tax rate as well as the collection rate that we have seen historically.
Okay, so this is at least partially driven by different estimated collection rates between the budget function and the assessed value estimates provided in the budget itself.
Yeah, correct. I mean, the methodology of projecting those two areas are just different, and we can definitely provide more details if you want to know more details about the big calculations that goes in behind those two. And if you look at our tax document, you can see that those two are actually two separate tax rates and then carries different assessed values each year.
Okay, well, thank you, and apologies for dwelling on this.
No need for that.
One of my points of interest coming into this was better understanding how the revenue implications would be of our existing economic catastrophe. And certainly, because of the property tax measures passed in the 90s, that the gap between our assessed and market values is wide, right? And so we have a lot of room to close that gap before we see revenue implications. And so I think that's why I sort of dug in a little deeper, and I appreciate you working to help me understand the differences in those two estimates included in the same document.
Yep, absolutely.
Daniel, I can tell you as a member of the Board of Property Tax Appeals, it is a very complicated situation, and you're welcome to come in and sit on or apply to be on it. But if you have any specific, if you don't feel comfortable with what you've gotten here, if you want to submit written questions with, very specifics to help you out, I'm sure that they would be, happy to do that, because it is a very complex situation with these tax rates. So.
Thank you. I appreciate that offer.
Ray, go ahead.
Because of the urban growth boundaries coming in and the city of Beaverton, city of Hillsborough and whatnot, part of this may be involved with the enhanced stuff, but how do you differentiate in your patrolmen in those particular areas? Because we've got quite a bit coming in within this next year. You work with the cities on that? Are they part of responsible for that area, even though they've not annexed it? How does that play out? Or do you still have to take care of it before it's annexed?
If it's in the district, then we are the police providers of service. As soon as that gets annexed, if a piece of property gets annexed, then it's withdrawn from the district, property owner doesn't pay taxes, and that municipality is the service provider. When it comes to just responding to 911 emergencies, every police car in the county has a automatic vehicle locator transmitter in their trunk, and the closest car goes, dispatch just sends the closest car. And if Beaverton shows up outside the city, or we show up because we're closest inside the city, then we make the scene safe, and then the agency of jurisdiction does the follow-up.
If, because of the stock market and PERS, and it may take a while before it goes back up, you've got a contingency out there that your PERS fees are going to be not very well situated at this particular point, and then in the near future, it's going to take a while. How are you situated for that?
We have a bit of experience with this going back to 2009, 10, 11, and I think what we did at that time was prioritize training, leadership, equipment. We ended up having to hold some vacancies because we needed to trim our personnel costs. Now it took us a few years to climb out of that hole, if you will, to train up enough people to get fully staffed again. But if that requirement arrives again, then we will just hold vacancies, scale back training, and we'll just continue to trim costs as we need to. I just don't want to lay people off. That's my hard line in the sand because we have professionals who are invested and they love this work and they're good at it. And I think we can avoid that. But we'll see what happens and we'll work our way through it, and have great partners in the finance with the finance team and our board of commissioners.
Last little one, because of COVID. Hopefully, COVID would be done here in the next period that we're talking about. But you got a contingency out for that. Say next fall, it takes back up again and goes on down the line.
Right. So we're going to.
Especially in the jail situation.
Yes. Gosh, I love that question. We are just beginning to reopen slowly. That is, expand our adults in custody population. We just increased over the weekend by about 40. We're getting ready to increase by about another 100.
Could I stop you there for clarification? So yes. I don't know what's going on at the jail. Has it been emptied out, or for the benefit of the people that are not aware, could you give us a little bit more background?
On March 16th, we made releases in the jail because the COVID situation was clearly upon us, and we needed to establish social distancing to keep our adults in custody safe and to keep our staff safe. And so we made some select releases of low-level offenders with compromised immunity, and I established a threshold for booking. That's A and B felonies, sex crimes, domestic violence, and violent person crimes. So that lowered the population of our adults in custody in our jail by almost 50%. And we've been hovering there for about a little over a month until we figure out COVID-19. And all of our staff in the jail and all of our adults in custody are wearing face coverings. And we are cleaning from one end to that building to the other and starting over. And we made other moves to prioritize the safety of everyone inside that facility. So now we're starting to open back up again slowly in concert with advice from our Health and Human Services professionals. But we have not got an infection in that facility, knock on wood. That's been super important. If we do, then we could take a step back. We might have to make some releases again, depending on what happens. We have adults who are in isolation and monitoring, and we're administering tests because there are some symptomatic adults in custody. So far, not a single one of those in custody have tested positive, but we're just something we have to keep a very close eye on. Jails across the state are all in the same boat.
So thank you very much for taking us through both the ESPD itself, service district, as well as the district patrol budget. I just have a very detailed question on the district patrol. So increase of FTE, including 5 new deputies. Scheduled replacement of 20 vehicles and the request for 7 new vehicles.
Right.
5 deputies, 7 vehicles.
Yeah, good. So one of the factors that informs our request for new vehicles is ADA related. We have more and more deputies we've got a couple of 7-footers. We have deputies with some back issues. They carry more gear than I carry, to be honest with you, and they work through the interactive process with HR, and they need to drive an SUV or they need to drive a Caprice.
You need that flexibility.
We need the flexibility, yes, ma'am. And we have 1, 2, 3 locations as well. Great question.
Are there any more questions from commissioners or lay members?
No, I just make a comment that I'm just so happy with your tenure, Sheriff. It's been a great relationship, and the way that you've handled the situation in the jail just further buttresses my strong feelings of support for what you do in your time as a sheriff. It's been great.
Thanks, Commissioner.
Yeah, just on the budget, on the numbers, if we could just go through one more time between the district patrol and the ESPD numbers, because they are different, the numbers on 286 page and what you presented. So can you just clarify that one more time for the newbie?
I don't have 286 in front of me. Jack, is that something you can handle?
I could
Sheriff
take a crack at it. So ESPD is about the revenue from the tax district that comes in, and the district patrol budget is essentially the operating budget. So there is a transfer of dollars from the ESPD fund to the district patrol, and then the district patrol budget on pages 286 through 287, PDF 324, 325 is how those dollars are put into practice to actually provide the services of the enhanced sheriff patrol.
And to add to that, Melissa, is that you see a slightly difference between the revenue in district patrol and the expenditures out of ESPD. The reason is because we also have intergovernment agreements with certain other jurisdictions to provide services. So ESPD is the majority of the funding for district patrol, but not 100% per se. Yeah.
For example, City of North Plains, City of Cornelius, the sheriff's office is the district patrol for those small cities. And King City too, or is that just an idea still brewing?
Gaston, Banks, Cornelius, North Plains.
Was there one where you were doing nighttime?
Forest Grove, we're helping out at night. Gosh, good job, Chair. That's.
Well, see, I got it wrong which one it was, so I didn't pass the test.
Very impressive.
Commissioner Willie or Mr. Barron, do you have any questions? Okay, I just had a few things. As far as returning the surplus, I think that it's great anytime you don't spend money that you don't need to, that it's returned. But, is there a reason or a use, and I understand with COVID, every organ of government needs every penny, but you mentioned keeping some of it for the body camera. I mean, would keeping more of it roll out the body camera program fully, or?
The short answer is yes, though I would be comfortable with a 2 to 3 year rather than 5 to 6. So I appreciate that thought, though. We could move faster. Just a couple other things. I'm on the Civil Service Commission, and we attended an event at the Public Safety Training Center, and it's just fantastic. So if you've not been there, try to get over there to see what's going on. I think that it's great that you're bringing, especially high school students. I work in the Hillsborough School District, and I've also lived in Russia and in Eastern Europe, and many countries of the world, the police are seen as the adversaries. They're not people that you want to interact with. And we have many immigrants from around the world coming here, and certainly with the exception of Canada, but they come from cultures where the police are seen as adversaries. And so if you can get them young, so that they see that the police are your friends, and especially when they're older and seeing it as a viable occupation, I think that when you bring them in, you're going to get people that in the future are going to join you or another agency. But if they don't see that, the reason I went to the University of Oregon is I used to go down for the Model United Nations. I wouldn't have attended there if I hadn't. So, I think that that's really great. And then identity theft, you mentioned that a little bit. But it seems like that is ever growing, especially with the internet. And if I can stay at home during COVID, I'm not going to get in a car accident. If I keep the door locked, no one's going to come in and hurt me. But there's always, the internet's always on, and they're always trying to steal it from you or send viruses or whatever. So do you have a person that's dedicated or detectives that specialize in that?
We do. We used to have a full-time team that was dedicated to that effort. Right now, we have one detective who's got some special certifications in that area. He can really follow the money trail, so to speak. So we have the capacity to work those kind of cases, but we don't have a team of people tackling that right now.
That's all my questions and comments. Before we close, is there anybody else that would like to ask a question or make a comment? Okay, well, thank you very much for the presentation.
Thank you for your service.
Thank you. So it looks like we have a 10-minute intermission that's going to be taking place.
Wonderful.
So should we say 8:01 will return? 8, okay. I was going with that, just so that everyone can see it. Okay, 8:01, thank you.
Hopefully by then, Roy has completed his tour of his house or whatever it was that he was doing.
I thought he was driving. You hear him flushing.
You're terrible, Dick.
Oh, he can still hear us?
Of course.
Well, I was hoping so.
Pam, that was perfect.
Just because he darkens his screen doesn't mean he can't hear us.
I try not to.
Three kids each day, and normally I take control of the screen so they can see what I'm doing. And then they get out some food where they have cellophane and it's just crunch. Or this one, yeah. And it's amazing, it takes them 15 minutes to eat something scrunch. And it's like they're doing it for no reason at all. And then one day I'm talking and I hear this. It sounded like a metal file, and they were just like cutting their computer. Oh, sorry, there's something on my camera lens. And I mean, I could have switched over to see what they were doing, but it's what are you doing? But they're fifth graders, so they're on their bed, they're falling off their bed. It's just and then joke around. Dogs are barking. Or, I got to get up and get the door. Just a minute, Mr. Mills. Oh yeah. Well, I mean, you see them now where people get up and they're wearing underwear. They're walking around and things like that. Yeah, you see that on people showing that on Facebook now. Yeah. There's so much good technology. Even working with your kids, they spend so much time. Left is the other way. I'm going now. You're going to stop at the arrow. You went too fast. It's like, oh, now I don't know what you did.
You're the only one.
Where's
the rest?
Doing that.
Well, Steve Frank should be online.
I thought, oh, there he is. I figured he had to be here.
What now?
Good. I even printed up the budget for long range planning and the whole thing.
Ah, beat me to it.
Oh, is this your job?
Just to see
I just try and help make this better.
how much money you had for this
I'm
next
good.
year and whatnot.
Yeah, I think that's a good question.
I printed it all out and looked at it.
Yeah, I don't know if you heard.
When Todd Watkins shows up, there's always a party.
Yeah.
That's what I heard. That's what I heard.
Well, I get a full hour, right?
Take as long as you need.
If Todd gets a full hour, I'm leaving early.
I think Roy's going to have a number of questions about surfacing roads, so yeah, okay.
You know me, I never say a word.
Yes, Ray, we know that.
Okay, so it's 8:02. We said we would return at this time and resume our meeting. This segment is the URMD budget presentation. And so if no one else has anything to say, go ahead, Todd, please.
Great. So I'm Todd Watkins, and I manage the county's Road Operations and Maintenance Division. And tonight we're going to talk about roads and safety projects and the Neighborhood Streets Program. So, great, we got the slide up and going. I do have one staff member who is available, which we may call up later. So the Urban Road Maintenance District, similar to the ESPD, serves urban unincorporated Washington County. Probably the most interesting fact about this area is that if it were a city, it would be the second largest in the state, only behind Portland. It's larger than Salem, Eugene, Hillsborough, Beaverton, Bend. And we serve 230 to 260,000 people. We do have quite a few of things that we do within the district. If we go to the next slide, please. Our core mission is road surface maintenance, and that's what drove the district to be formed. At the time, the condition of the roads were in terrible shape, and the voters agreed that the time came to find a funding source, a stable funding source. And so that had been the mission for the district for quite some time. We did expand the district to include the Neighborhood Streets Program, which is basically traffic calming. And then most recently, we've added the pedestrian and biking improvements. And that's been a very important element of our mission. So pavement distress is an important thing that we deal with on a daily basis, and it's happening all the time. I'll just give you a brief rundown on what those are, and you can see that on the screen in front of you. But those are common terms that we have: alligatoring, cracking, and rutting, raveling, delamination, utility cuts, and then the ever-present weathering. Fortunately, any of those things up there except for the weathering are not what you see out there on the roads right now. Those are all examples of what will happen if you don't take care of your roads. And we're fortunate because we've had a stable funding source that's been able to take care of these roads over time. When we do have things like utility cuts, or when roads do get exposed to the weather, we have a robust permitting program that keeps track of where work is happening in the right-of-way, and we make sure that that work gets done to a standard that's acceptable to us. And then we also keep track of the pavement conditions so that as the roads do wear out over time, we tend to them in an appropriate manner. To do that, we have an asset management program that we use. It's a state-of-the-art program that's very prevalent on the West Coast. It was developed in the Bay Area. It's called Street Saver. And we have all of our road segments, both within IRMD and within the road fund category of roads in this system, and we keep track of all the different segments and their condition. We also hire a consultant to go out and physically, visually inspect all of those road segments on a 4-year cycle within IRMD. So every year they're out there evaluating 25% of our roads. And the reason why that's important is because even though we have this fancy computer model that can predict the condition of the roads, certain things will happen over time, even in a 4-year window, that we don't want to let get away from us. So we continually monitor those so that we always know what the conditions are and that we can catch things before they become catastrophic. The way we do that, next slide please, is we have 2 basic maintenance techniques that we use. We have a slurry seal and we have what's called a pavement overlay. A slurry seal is basically an emulsion, like an oil and water mix that has some fine aggregates in it, and it seals the road with a very thin layer of this material. It fills the cracks and it provides a new wearing surface, but it doesn't add any structure to the road. In the other year that we work, we do what's called an overlay, and that's your traditional paving where you have the hot mix asphalt that gets put down with a machine. It's spread out and then rolled, and then you have a brand new road surface. And those really are the key to maintaining the roads in Washington County within the ERMD because of the fact that we're extending the life and we're preserving at the same time. If we were to let a road go and not do this preventive maintenance, then the cost would be substantially more when the time came to actually work on any one of those road segments. I have a few photos to illustrate kind of what these terms mean. So the pavement overlay is the most extensive repairs that we do right now. And when we do this, the PCI, or Pavement Condition Index, gets reset to 100. And 100 is the top score for any given road. If we do a slurry seal, which is the next slide, this will add about 6 to 12 points to that PCI. Again, no structure to the road, but it just adds that new wearing surface and seals the cracks because water is the enemy of roads. If water penetrates into the road base, that's how you get potholes. And fortunately, we don't have too many potholes on our county or ERMD roads. So I mentioned Pavement Condition Index and how the condition of the ERMD roads are really in great shape. We do have targets that we are shooting for when it comes to these urban road maintenance district roads. And we have things broken down on this chart in a couple different areas. In the ERMD, we have urban locals and neighborhood routes. And then outside of ERMD, predominantly in the rural area, we have rural locals, rural collectors, arterials, and then we also have urban collectors and urban arterials. So the nice thing about this chart is it's going to show you really how the benefit of having this dedicated funding source has elevated the road conditions to a great level. So if we go to the next slide, those bolded numbers and those classifications represent similar road classifications between the ERMD and non-ERMD roads. And as you can see, the target of what we're trying to shoot for is 75 within the ERMD and 65 outside of ERMD. The great thing is that if we actually go to the actuals, the ERMD roads far exceed the target. And even though the non-ERMD roads exceed as well, you can see that the ERMD roads are far above what that is. What this allows us to do is to spend more money on the Neighborhood Streets program, which I'll talk about a little bit, and then also our ERMD bike and ped improvement projects. But paving and road surfacing is not the only thing that we do, and I think I'm 2 slides ahead now. If you want to click, there we go, perfect. So other activities that we do within ERMD are also related to road maintenance. And we usually hear about these through what we call service requests. So this is when citizens call in and they report things that need to be done. The most common thing that we get, which is that dark blue, are vegetation requests. So overgrown vegetation, blocked signs, sight distance at intersections, or weeds and grasses that are encroaching on the edge of the road. That's the most common thing, and that's happening right now as we speak in this nice, warm, damp weather that we're having. But we also do other things. We repair signs, we fix potholes, we pick up trash and debris, and a number of other things that are all related to the condition of the road. The other program that ERMD funds is the Neighborhood Streets program, and this is a program that has 3 distinct goals. It's discouraging undesirable driver behavior, so this is like cut through traffic. Also trying to promote and improve the multimodal traffic, so bikes and peds, and then sharing the road with cars. And then also we're trying to involve the local residents with those solutions. It's an interactive process where neighbors come to the county, they request work in an area, We have a multi-year process where we have to go through this education process. We do signs, we do open houses, and we actually will, or neighborhood meetings. And then what happens is, if those things do not improve, then we can, the road conditions or the traffic conditions, we can then go to physical devices. And those physical devices historically had been speed humps or speed bumps. But now what we're seeing is the fact that these speed feedback signs are actually very effective, and they don't create a physical impediment in the roadway. So these are the signs that tell you what the speed is. So it might be posted for 25, but you're going 30, so it'll tell you what your speed is. And when people see that, it's a visual reinforcement that, oh, I'm speeding and I better slow down. So that's been a great addition to our program. What we are proposing to do later this year is to come back to the board with a proposal to consider adding residential collectors to this list of eligible roads. Right now, it's only limited to urban locals and neighborhood routes, but there are some collectors that really function more like those other classifications, and they would benefit from having the ability to participate in this program as well. So moving on now to kind of the flagship program of the district. On our next slide, we'll give you a taste of the pedestrian and biking improvement program. This has been something that's really taken off since we first started. When we first started this, it included wide shoulders, a little bit of sidewalk infill here and there, but it's really blossomed into a great program where now we're taking entire corridors and we're improving sidewalks and connectivity between neighborhoods and between points of interest. Interestingly, though, even though these are pedestrian and biking improvement programs, they really are almost like little mini capital projects with all the same issues that we have to deal with. And so we are dealing with drainage, we're dealing with improvements in the right-of-way, utilities, so they become very challenging. And so even though they're small projects, so to speak, they can still get quite expensive quite fast. Next slide, please. So these projects do need to be inside the ERM boundary. We are going into our, well, we started in 2011, and the first projects were actually funded in 2012 and 2013. At the time, we were thinking this was going to be a one-year program where we would select a project in the fall and build it the following year. Well, we quickly found out that these projects became so complex so fast because of, again, all the things I mentioned as far as their complexity, that these really are becoming 2- and 3-year projects. And so you'll see that in the budget discussion later, that we do need to be thinking about these as a multi-year project. We've done a lot of good things. On the next slide, you'll see that we've funded 60 projects so far. We've completed 39, and we currently have 13 that are in the design phase. 8 are planned for construction this year. And the funding has been predominantly through ERMD. However, we have been able to leverage several million from other funding sources, such as Gain Share. And I think there's been some road fund dollars in there as well. I do want to do a shout out to our Capital Project Services Division. They're the ones who actually deliver these projects, and the project team who performs that work has done a phenomenal job of keeping these projects on schedule and under budget. And I can't say enough about them because these are very challenging projects, and they always seem to pull a rabbit out of the hat when it comes to the project delivery. Next slide, please. So we do use our Urban Road Maintenance District Advisory Committee as the conduit for the project selection. However, it is a public process. We have a very robust public involvement plan and process when it comes to advertising and soliciting comments. They go through a vetting process and a discussion process through online forums, we send out postcards, and then the committee deliberates and debates the merits of those different projects, ultimately providing recommendations to the Board of Commissioners for final selection. And that process does take several months due to the fact that we do engage the public through many stages of the process. So currently we have 13 projects that were selected for the upcoming fiscal year as well as for next fiscal year. Those occurred last year, and they include 10 sidewalks, 1 sidewalk and asphalt path project, and then 2 pedestrian crossings. We had about 11.4 million programmed for those projects, with 7 million coming from ERMD, and then the other 4 million coming from other sources. We did go to a 2-year project selection process just because it is such an intensive process that we wanted to be able to maximize our resources to be able to get more things done within that year. So the way that we actually deliver these projects, I mentioned our capital project group, and they do such a great job with delivering the projects. So we actually, as the county, manage the projects. We do some design work in-house, but most of it's done by outside consultants, and then all of the construction is done by private contractors. So I do have a few slides here that just show the benefit to the community of what these projects generally look like before and after. If you've driven around the urban unincorporated, you've probably recognized some of these, and that bright white concrete sure stands out the first couple of years. Beef Bend Road, which is a great sidewalk connection, and we just go through these really quickly. This is you would never think that a sidewalk would be able to fit in that corridor there on Rigger, but as you can see, it's a beautiful location now for folks to walk down. 214th, the reason why I like this picture so much is because it actually shows the construction. Oftentimes people will think, well, gee, why can't you just go put a 5-foot concrete sidewalk or a 5-foot path? And this illustrates the amount of work that it takes to actually build a sidewalk and the amount of earthwork and excavation and staging that it takes. So it takes a lot more than just 5 feet to actually build a sidewalk. And that's why I think that picture tells a great story about the actual delivery of these projects. And then last, we have another one on 214th, another perspective, and this is just a great spot where, you had standing water, you had mud, you had no real area for people to walk other than in the roadway, and now they have a beautiful sidewalk. So as I mentioned, this work is done with the assistance and through the guidance of our advisory committee, and we have a few of them on here tonight, as well as a alumni with Anthony. This group meets fairly regularly, especially during a project selection year, once a month at Walnut Street. And it's a great group who have a lot of good discussion and deliberation about the future of ERMD. So getting on to the actual nuts and bolts of our budget. So the bulk of the revenue does come from the property taxes. The assessment, it's about 25 cents per thousand. And the revenues for this coming year are estimated to be 5.8 million. Interestingly, and we'll talk about this in a few minutes, but ERMD does not have any personnel or equipment. We have an IGA with the county to actually perform the work. So everything that happens within ERMD is all about project delivery. And you'll see that here in the breakdown. Our expenditure is, we're planning $6.81 million for the projects, $750,000 for our road treatment, surface treatments, and that number has been pretty steady for the last several years, and we found that that's a good number for us to maintain that PCI. And then we also transfer some money to some other programs, including our partners at Clean Water Services, where we partner with them for some projects that have both a transportation, road-related, and drainage-related nexus. Now you'll notice that the number for the revenue exceeds the expenditures exceeds the revenue. And the reason for that is because these projects, being that they are quite extensive, we do have some carryovers periodically, and this is a year where we actually have some carryovers where those multi-year projects now we're having to spend money in those off years. So if we go to the last slide, please, this will give you a summary. As I mentioned, you won't see any personnel or equipment within this group. It's all about projects. We are requesting $9.4 million as our budget, and that will still leave us with a funding and ending fund balance of $8.2 million. It's important that we do maintain a healthy fund balance because during the summer when we're doing all this construction, we need that money for cash flow because we don't have our collections until the fall when taxes are generally beginning to flow in. And with that, I will answer any questions that any of you have to the best of my ability.
Just one, that budget summary?
Yes.
Will the public find that in any document?
I don't know how that will be published. I'd have to find out how that information will be published.
We can definitely post that on our budget website as part of the budget presentation materials as well.
Nope, that was it.
I just have a quick comment, if I may. You had mentioned this, Todd, about starting this bike and ped program some years ago, and I had thought a couple of years I would feel very pleased if we could do some discrete projects over a 2 or 3 time period. But now we're looking at year 9 and year 8. We've done a lot more projects than I had thought we were going to do when we first kind of gave the green light for this. And a couple of projects you highlighted this year are great projects. That Johnson, the TV Highway 214th Avenue project. That's an area that is a lower income area. I think having those connections, walking connections to TV Highway and the bus line and the safety to some nearby churches and schools is really much appreciated. So I'm just really pleased that this program has been able to continue for as long as it has, and that's partly the result of your efficiencies and things that you'll be able to squeeze money out elsewhere. So I really appreciate that. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Do we have any questions or comments from our online people?
Yep, I do. This is Roy.
Go ahead, Commissioner.
Thank you. I won't get the wrong year this time, I promise. In regard to what we did about 4 or 5 years ago, where we were looking at that pavement index and decided that we would take and change that just a bit and put it into safety programs. I see you have some safety programs in. We continue to do that, which I think is a good idea. But is that pavement index, is that deteriorating at all? I haven't had an update on that in a long time.
Right. So the question regarding the condition, pavement condition index and the trend, it actually, Commissioner, has stayed relatively stable. And that's for a couple of different reasons. The pavement condition that we published, that we show even here tonight, is based on the overall network. So over the last few years, the county has seen growth, right? There's been development activity, and those roads often will become part of ERMD. So all of those road segments now are joining ERMD at a very high level. So they're actually kind of helping to prop up the pavement condition. Also, we continue to fund the maintenance program. We've chosen not to not do work, and that's been a deliberate decision on our part because we want to maintain contracted services year after year so that we don't dip or slide. And so I think if we were to see development maybe slow down or not have as many roads coming in, that might slide a little bit. But at this point, it's just holding very steady. But we monitor it yearly with those inspections.
Any more questions, Commissioner Rogers? Commissioner Treese or Mr. Hauser, do you have any questions?
I'm good.
Okay.
Daniel?
Thank you. I first want to say that I worked for the Association of Oregon Counties a number of years ago, and one of my tasks was to compile pavement indexes across counties, across the state. And whenever I see ERM's pavement condition index data, I'm always like marveling because almost anyone, I mean, it's just so much better than many of our peers around the state, let alone the nation, are dealing with. As much as we, you know, any of us will still run into a pothole here and there, in which case we should send in a service request. Really quite impressive and very appreciated, I think, that we've been able to manage the system so well. And so kudos to the staff and the taxpayers who've decided to make this investment in the system. Separate from that, I want to say that the safety improvement program has just been an absolute joy to be a part of selecting projects and to be involved in helping to figure out where of the hundreds of projects that our community needs in terms of sidewalks and bike paths, who this year will get the investment, and seeing it shift to a 2-year cycle, which is allowed to do much larger projects, has been really incredible, and I think really important for us to take it to the next level, as you said, of really providing capital investments in our community, improving the safety of areas in our community that really need improved walkability. So this is mostly just a comment of applause and appreciation for the staff and for the taxpayers that have made this investment, because the community we live in is much safer and much more enjoyable because of these relatively limited dollars that have been invested. So I've really appreciated that. The question, I guess, second from that I have is around the sort of outlook, and I guess this applies to ERMD and ESPD, so this might be more for Jack and administrative folk. I noticed that because of that property tax gap, that we're going to see continued growth in our property taxes in the short term. Is there any sense if that growth trend will start to shrink 2-3 years out if we see property values sort of decline? I guess I'm wondering, like, yes, in this immediate fiscal year that's looming, you're not forecasting any significant decline, but is that stay true for 2, 3, 4 years out as we're thinking about ERM's ability to continue investing in safety projects, for example?
I can speak from a financial projection perspective, is that we look at some historical data, and usually our assessed value is not affected by the recession very much, just because the big gap between our assessed value and the real market value. With that said, that we do during the time of a recession, we do see a slight decline in collection rate. So that may actually play into the picture of our projection. But I wouldn't say that difference there is going to be anything major from a tax collection perspective that we're expecting right now. But you know, we never know what's going to happen next year, and in today's data, we never know what's going to happen next week. So we're definitely continuing to monitor that closely.
Thank you. That's perfect. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Yes.
Didn't we have in one of our budget forecast meetings a graph that showed the trend line of real market value and assessed value over time and illustrated that gap?
Yes.
That might be useful for us to share with Daniel. I think that, it may get to his question about that growth potential.
Absolutely. I'll find that data and then share with Daniel. Yeah.
Go ahead, Ray.
I have to thank the commissioners over the years that I've been on ERMDAC. We started many years ago with just a few jobs, and they were small dollar jobs compared to what we do today. But without their help, we wouldn't have a lot of the different sidewalks and the street improvements right around the schools that we have today that we've picked up over the last, say, 10 years. In the last couple of years, we've increased the amount of dollars going into bigger jobs, and now we can still spread out and have many different jobs, but we're allowed to do larger jobs, hopefully combine them with gain share and a couple of other different type of projects. It's making especially the low area, it really needs a lot of help, and so that's been great. I have one question, and it may actually go all the way back to you, Chair. The forestry decision having to do with the logging thing, may come back and impact even the total budget down the line. I know it's probably into appeal now, but it's going to come down somewhere down the line, and it could hit our budgets next year or the following year, depending. I know Washington County is not as bad as some of the other counties, but that would affect ERM. It would affect everything here. So I don't know where we stand on that coming down the pike.
Well,
so
and
it's kind of to you too.
Yep, and the impact of this current recession. We have a state forecast, revenue forecast due on May 20th as well. So there are a lot of variables going on. I think the E-Board is or has recently done something with regard to that forestry decision, but I've sort of lost sight of that given all the COVID financing discussions that we've had. But yep, the county's been tracking it.
We just got so many different things. COVID, recession, forestry, you name it. So we're fighting everything.
Yep, the forestry item we don't control, but the budget would certainly be impacted on if the state changes the revenue sharing that takes care of so many different services. And now we're dealing with it for the recession too. So we've got a lot of unknowns. One way or the other, we'll get through it.
Stephen, did you have a question or a comment?
Yeah, just a quick question. I think I knew this before, but so you mentioned centerline miles and then miles treated. Yes. Centerline miles, that's where, like, if you have a 4-lane and it's a mile, that's 4 centerline miles?
Yeah, so the way that we count that is the centerline is just that. It's the 1 mile of road is 1 centerline mile. If you have a 4 or 5 lane road, then that's going to be multiples of that. And we use 11 feet as our multiplier. So we take the width of the road or the area of the road and we divide it by 11, and that gives us our lane miles. So our lane miles will be extremely higher than our centerline miles. So we have about 1,300 centerline miles within the county, and we have over 3,000 lane miles, just to give you a sense. Because a Murray Boulevard, 1 mile of Murray Boulevard might be the same, or would be counted the same as 1 lane of, say, Patton Valley Road. But obviously the lane miles are extremely different.
I just want one other follow-up. You mentioned something about that we might be looking at expanding some funding here on the ERM to the smaller collector roads. I'm trying to think of some examples in my district. I'm thinking maybe a street like Oak Street, Davis Road might be an example of that. Maybe you can correct me. And do you have some examples of some of these sort of smaller collector roads that might be future candidates?
Yeah, and there's actually a list, but I don't have it off the top of my head, Commissioner, but I can get that for you. But we have there's a segment, a list of road segments that fall into this special category where they're classified as collector, but they really function more as a residential road.
Okay.
And they would benefit from these neighborhood street program efforts if the board, when it's presented to them, approves that ordinance change. But I can get that for you.
Thank you. Yeah.
Ms. Laird, did you have something?
Yeah, this is just budget detail, but on page 288, there's the Urban Road Maintenance and Improvement District line, and then the ERM safety improvements. And it looks like there's kind of a swap of money between those two. Could you explain? One goes down and one goes up.
Right. So the ERM safety, and Sheila might actually be able to be a better person to explain this one, but the ERM safety improvement programs are a separate program within ERMD. And it's a way for us to keep track of the money because of the fact that they are being spent year after year, multi-year projects. So it's a way for us to better track the monies.
Okay, so it's in those particular projects.
Right.
And then the contingency went down this year. We're proposed to go down, and the reason?
Right, and so again, because projects go over multiple years, if a project let's say a project was selected a couple of years ago, than we would have budgeted. And then what we do is, through the design phase, and then ultimately when it comes to construction, then that project may need to have money carried over to a particular year. So it's carried in the contingency, right? And ERMD is unique because it's only can be spent on these ERMD roads. So if money is not spent and it's in a particular year, it goes back into the contingency and it doesn't get shared with anybody else. It can only be spent on very specific things. So ERMD money that's collected is only spent on the ERMD eligible expenditures.
Thank you.
But then related to that, don't the actual project expenditures show up in either operations and maintenance or the capital?
CPS, correct. Yes, right. Because they deliver the project, so those run through their budget.
Yep. Similar to how the patrol district and the source of the funding went.
Commissioner Woolley, did you have anything you want to say? Okay. If there's nothing else, I just had a couple of things. I've had the same permanent address in Aloha since about 1973. And Aloha is known for where the sidewalk starts and then ends immediately. And there's not much we can do about that. But at the time, one of my earliest memories is how bad the roads were. Washington County roads, especially in that area, were all alligatored almost 50 years ago. And so we are very fortunate to have this system where we can have, you know, first world roads instead of third world roads there. So thank you for all that you do.
And just for the record, so the roads inside of ERMD are some of the best roads within the state. And I'm not just saying that, they really are. With the dedicated funding that we have for these roads, we're able to do what we need to do when we need to do it. And because of that, we're able to take really good care of what we have. So it's been a great program.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Todd. So we have next steps and questions. Is that something that you'd like to address, Jack? Thank you.
Okay, if you can advance to slide number 56. Yep. So the next Budget Committee meeting is scheduled for May 27th, and it's at 6:30 p.m. For the Enhanced Sheriff Patrol District and Urban Road Maintenance District, and the public testimony is scheduled at 7 p.m. And the location is still here at the Public Service Building Auditorium, and then we will also have Zoom available both for the committee members as well as the public members that wish to make a testimony through via that method. And that is also the budget hearing time where the committee will take actions and consider approval of the budget, either as proposed or as adjusted by the committee. So is there any questions for the next budget committee meeting? All right, I'll hand it back to Chair Mills.
Okay, before we adjourn, I just want to say, and I think I said this last year, I really appreciate the new leadership of the county moving meetings towards the evening so that people can attend it. Meetings used to be during the day when many citizens were not able to come. I want to compliment leadership on the transparency, especially with work session documents now being put online. I find that those are very helpful. Looking at other county governments within the metro area, we are very fortunate to have county commissioners who we can be proud of. The civil servants that work for us, some of them who are in here, we know who they are. We've lost many great ones due to retirement in the last couple of years, but I just want to express my gratitude to the employees and the leadership of this county for the hard work that they do at all times, but especially at this time when we have a very unique situation in our government or our society. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, if there's nothing else, we are adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great.
Thank you for the kind words.
Nice job chairing.
Good night.
Boy, I hope that logging doesn't go anywhere. That could be a disaster if someone else
I can't remember the status, but I know there was